I reminded him that I had tried to wake him up earlier, and his alarm had been blaring too. "Now please eat your breakfast," I said as he rubbed his eyes and shuffled to the dining table. He immediately started complaining about the eggs. "Hey Grace, this egg is too runny. I can't eat this unless it's well done. Make it over," he demanded. I was caught hanging laundry and tried to hold back my irritation. "Then don't eat it," I snapped. "Why would you say that? And this coffee is scorching hot. Mom always got the eggs and coffee just right." All right, I sighed, quickly redoing the eggs and letting the coffee cool. He ate hurriedly but left his plate on the table, rushing towards the restroom. "Wait up, you should clean up after yourself." "I'm short on time," he called back, dismissing his responsibility, even though the breakfast delay was his fault. Annoyed, I paused my makeup routine to clean up the dishes. While I was picking out my outfit, he called out again. "Grace, over here. Help with my tie." There he stood, the tie hanging limply around his neck, looking utterly helpless. "Seriously? You can't even tie your tie? What did you do before we got married?" "Mom always did it," he replied sheepishly. With a deep exhale, I knotted his tie, and somehow, we both managed to leave the house. This had become our routine. He never helped with any housework, and it felt like I was juggling everything and babysitting him too. Every time an issue arose, it was always, "Mom did it this way," or with Mom, "It went like that," always referencing his mother, Michelle. This routine dragged on for a year, and as the pressures mounted, thoughts of divorce began to creep into my mind. My father's insistence that marriage is forever echoed in my mind, tempering my frustrations. However, an unexpected hiccup at work led to my being assigned a week-long business trip starting the next day. When I broke the news to my husband that evening, he paused his video game, clearly surprised. "Hold up, a business trip for a whole week? It's out of my hands. Work's calling," I explained. "No way, who's going to cover for you here for a week?" he asked, irritation seeping into his tone. "You'll have to step up. It's about time you got a grip on the household duties," I responded. At that, he set down his controller and locked eyes with me. "Isn't a wife supposed to care for her husband and the house? Are you just bailing on that?" His question dripped with outdated expectations. "Seriously? That's such old-school thinking. We both have jobs. We should be a team." "I don't see it that way," I countered. "Well, Mommy was always on top of things at home," he retorted. I couldn't help but point out, but she was a stay-at-home mom. Honestly, it's kind of odd to hear an adult man constantly talking about his mommy. He bristled at this. "What's your deal, taking shots at me and my mom?" "I'm not, but let's be real. You're a mama's boy. This is how you see me? You think you can talk to me like that?" His defensiveness escalated, but I had reached my limit. "Face it, you're a mama's boy. You can't get up without help, can't even tie your tie, and won't lift a finger around the house. You're constantly comparing me to your mom. For once, handle your stuff." "Really? You're going to come at me like that?" That's why I was iffy about marrying someone older. I should have sided with Mommy and chosen a younger, perkier girl, he shot back. His words struck a nerve, and our conversation spiraled into a major blowout. "Even joking, you shouldn't say stuff like that." "We're married," I said, trying to anchor the conversation to the commitment we had made to each other. The tension between us was palpable, revealing the deep rifts that have formed in our relationship. When my husband hinted at divorce during our heated argument, I was taken aback. With a smug tone, he challenged, "You can't possibly want a divorce, can you? You wouldn't want to be labeled divorced. And think about what your dad said about sticking together." But then he sharply added, "Well, I just did. If you go on this business trip and leave me here alone, I'm seriously considering a divorce." With those words, he stormed off to our bedroom, leaving me stunned. Despite the shock, the idea of divorce lingered in my mind, something I had previously struggled with, as I didn't want to disappoint my parents. Yet now, it seemed like a viable option to contemplate seriously. With these heavy thoughts, I went to bed. Bright and early the next day, I was up preparing for my trip. The fallout from our argument was still fresh and weighing on me, but I had work commitments to attend to. I nudged Edward, who was still nestled under the covers. "I'm heading out. You better wake up or you'll be late for work." His response was a sleepy, unintelligible mumble. Rolling my eyes, I left. A few hours later, a text from him popped up on my phone. You barely tried to wake me. Now I'm running late. Did you really go on that trip? I quickly texted back, I did wake you up, and yes, I'm on my trip. I'll be back in a week. He read my message but didn't reply. Mid-trip, I decided to call my parents to update them about Edward's behavior and share my growing inclination towards divorce. I braced myself for a lecture, unsure of how they would react to the possibility of our marriage ending. The call was going to be a difficult one, but it was necessary to seek their advice and perhaps their understanding of my situation. Their response took me by surprise. We had no idea he behaved like this. Take your time to think, but don't force yourself to stay in a situation that isn't right. Always remember, we are in your corner, no matter what you decide. Their words of unconditional support brought tears to my eyes. Upon returning from my business trip, I knew a serious conversation with Edward was inevitable. If he didn't show signs of change, I was ready to consider divorce more seriously. My mind was abuzz with thoughts as I walked into our house late in the evening, only to find Edward wasn't home yet. As I looked around, a set of signed divorce papers and a note on the table caught my attention. The note read, "Since you ditched the housework, I'm heading back to my folks. Check out the divorce papers and think things over." Reading this, my initial reaction was rage. How dare he threaten me with divorce? But as my anger subsided, I began to see the situation differently. Maybe this was a sign that ending things might not be such a bad idea after all. With that realization, I decided to file the papers. When the divorce was finalized, I felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. That evening, I went to bed and slept more soundly than I had in a long time. The next morning, as I enjoyed a peaceful cup of coffee, the door swung open, and in walked Edward, clearly upset. "Why didn't you come to my parents' place to apologize? What's gotten into you?" he demanded, his temper flaring. Then, noticing the empty spot where the divorce papers had been, his expression shifted from anger to shock. "Hold on, where are the divorce papers?" "Oh, I filed them," I calmly responded. "You did what?" He looked as if he had been slapped. "You went through with it." "Thanks for signing them. It made everything smoother," I said. "You can't be serious. Did you go all the way? Have you lost your mind?" he exclaimed, unable to hide his astonishment at my decisiveness. Seeing how composed I remained, he lost his cool completely. "That's it. I'm calling my parents." "Sure, knock yourself out," I replied, undisturbed by his threat, knowing I had made the right decision for myself. An hour after the confrontation with Edward, his parents, Michelle and Arthur, arrived at our apartment. Michelle immediately spotted me and dramatically exclaimed, "You! How could you just divorce Edward like that? What's your deal?" I responded coolly, "If he had the divorce papers all filled out and ready to go, doesn't that suggest he wanted out? Is that a problem?" "How can you be so bold when you're just his wife?" she countered, but before the situation could escalate further, Arthur intervened with a firm "enough." The room fell silent. Arthur turned to me. "Grace, can you walk us through what happened?" I agreed and began detailing the ongoing issues, our argument before my trip and the divorce papers Edward had left for me. I was at my wit's end. It seemed like he wanted a divorce, so I went with it, I explained, maintaining eye contact with Arthur. After a moment of consideration, Arthur was about to speak when Edward interjected, "Mommy, Dad, come on. Can't you see she's out of line? Tell her off." Michelle quickly sided with Edward. "Oh, Edward, my poor baby. She's so hasty. You should reverse the divorce right now." "There's no reversing it. Our divorce is final. We're strangers now," I stated firmly. Michelle's face turned red and she opened her mouth to respond, but once again, Arthur cut her off. "Zip it, Michelle." He then apologized to me for Edward's behavior. Turning to Edward, whose eyes were bulging with surprise, Arthur continued, "You bonehead. I knew you had issues, but this is next level. Using divorce papers as a threat? Unbelievable. You had it coming." Michelle tried to interject, but Arthur didn't let up. "It's partly on you, Michelle. You spoiled him. Watch out. If you keep this up, I might divorce you too." The tension in the room was palpable as Arthur confronted the reality of the situation, leaving Edward and Michelle at a loss for words. After the intense discussion, Michelle was visibly shaken, her thoughts lingering on the unexpected threat of divorce from Arthur. She murmured to herself, visibly troubled. As Arthur turned his attention back to me, His expression was marked by sincere regret. "Grace, I deeply regret the trouble our clueless son has caused you. It's clear he has a lot to learn. Please move on and find happiness in your life," Arthur implored with genuine concern. Thanking Arthur for his understanding, I watched as he left, taking a dejected Edward with him. It wasn't long before the news spread throughout our circle. Arthur had decided to cut financial and emotional ties with his son, a drastic step meant to push Edward towards self-sufficiency. Edward's life took a downward spiral shortly thereafter. He moved into a modest, somewhat neglected apartment, his first time living truly by himself. The transition was far from smooth. His new home quickly descended into chaos, a visible representation of his disorganized personal life. With no one to depend on and habitual tardiness, Edward soon found himself unemployed, his inability to adhere to a schedule finally catching up with him. Simultaneously, the dynamics within his family deteriorated further. Michelle, who had always been intricately involved in Edward's personal affairs, overstepped boundaries one too many times, which led to a serious fallout with Arthur. Ultimately, this resulted in their separation. Michelle ended up moving in with Edward, each of them struggling to find stable footing. They scraped by with low-end jobs, their lives marked by a series of unfortunate events and poor decisions, with no clear path to improvement visible. On the other hand, my own life took a markedly different turn. Free from the daily stresses and emotional drain of my relationship with Edward, I found myself alone in our condo, which now felt surprisingly spacious and full of potential. With renewed energy and focus, I dedicated myself to my career. The absence of Edward's negative influence allowed me to excel at work, and my professional life flourished as a result. Feeling liberated and optimistic, I embraced my newfound independence. My living space not only felt more open but became a true sanctuary where I could relax and plan for the future. The improvement in my work life was palpable, and I approached each day with a sense of excitement and anticipation for what lay ahead. The contrast between my thriving existence and the downward trajectory of Edward and Michelle's situation was stark. While they were no longer a part of my life, the lessons learned from our time together resonated deeply, reinforcing my commitment to personal growth and happiness.
I never expected to find the manuscript that would tear my family apart while cleaning out Dad's study. But there it was, tucked between dusty physics journals and Mom's neuroscience papers, a story I wrote when I was 12, covered in my mother's red ink. My name is Riley, and I used to think being different was my biggest problem. Turns out it was just the beginning. "What are you doing in here?" Mom's sharp voice made me jump. I clutched the wrinkled pages to my chest, feeling like I'd been caught stealing rather than cleaning. "Just organizing Dad's books before the department dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Found something interesting, though." Mom's eyes narrowed when she spotted the manuscript in my hands. "Oh, that old thing. I meant to dispose of it years ago." The casual dismissal in her voice felt like a slap. I opened the pages, my childhood imagination marked up like a failed exam. "You wrote that my story showed concerning priorities and was a waste of intellectual potential." My voice cracked. I was 12. "Riley, dear, we've been through this." Mom perched on Dad's leather chair, assuming her lecture pose. "The Thompson name carries certain expectations. Your sister Emily understood this by your age. She was already publishing research papers in junior journals. Right, because God forbid a Thompson do anything but science." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Heaven help us if one of us actually wanted to create something different. "Don't be dramatic." Mom stood, smoothing her blazer. "We simply wanted to guide you toward more productive pursuits. Now, please finish organizing these books. The Whitakers will be here in an hour, and Charles is particularly interested in Emily's new research proposal." Of course he was. Dr. Charles Whitaker, the family friend who'd been hovering around our academic achievements like a vulture since before I was born. He'd probably wet himself with excitement over Emily's latest brilliant paper. I waited until Mom's heels clicked down the hallway before slumping into Dad's chair. The manuscript trembled in my hands as I flipped through more pages. Each red mark felt like a fresh wound.
Lex scientific merit.
Unrealistic premise. Consider focusing on observable phenomena instead of fantasy. My phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Collins next door. "Tea's ready when you need it, dear. Made those shortbread cookies you like." I smiled despite myself. Mrs. Collins, my elderly neighbor, had been more supportive of my writing than my entire family combined. She actually read my stories without trying to turn them into research papers. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the house, followed by Emily's voice. "Mom? Dad?" The prototype results came back early. I shoved the manuscript into my bag. No way was I sitting through another round of Emily the Prodigy tonight. As I headed for the door, a folder fell from Dad's desk. Papers scattered across the floor, and one caught my eye, an email printout from Dr. Whitaker to my parents. Regarding Riley's future prospects, concerns about maintaining the Thompson legacy, suggest redirecting her interests. Emily's continued success crucial to our plans. My hands shook as I read. They'd been planning my life behind my back, trying to force me into their perfect academic mold. And Dr. Whitaker, that smug bastard, was pulling strings I never even knew existed. I stuffed the email into my bag with the manuscript. Footsteps approached the study. Emily's excited chatter, Mom's proud responses, Dad's measured praise. I slipped out the side door before they could see me. Mrs. Collins was waiting on her porch with tea and understanding eyes. "Rough day, dear." "You could say that." I clutched my bag tighter, feeling the weight of my childhood dreams and their betrayal inside it. I think it's time I showed them exactly what a waste of intellectual potential can do. The sun was setting behind the university buildings, casting long shadows across our perfectly manicured lawn. In the growing darkness, I began to plan. The next morning, I found Emily in her home lab, hunched over a microscope like it held the secrets to the universe. Maybe for her, it did. I clutched my proposal in sweaty hands, trying to ignore the familiar sting of walking into her perfectly organized workspace.
Got a minute?
I asked, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. She didn't look up. "Make it quick. I'm tracking cellular degradation patterns."
Of course she was.
I perched on a stool, unfolding my sketches. Remember how we used to make those science comics when we were kids? I had this idea. We could collaborate on an educational graphic novel. Make complex research accessible to everyone. The microscope's light clicked off. Emily finally turned, her expression a perfect mirror of Mom's disapproval. "Riley, I have a breakthrough paper due next month. Dr. Whitaker is presenting it at the International Symposium." "Right, because heaven forbid science be fun or accessible," I muttered, crumpling my sketches. "Not everything needs to be turned into a story." Emily's voice softened with that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "Maybe you should focus on something more substantial." The word hung between us like poison. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "You know what? Forget it. Enjoy your cellular whatever." "Riley, wait." Emily called after me, but I was already gone. I stormed into the kitchen, nearly colliding with Dad. He was absorbed in his tablet, probably reviewing another groundbreaking physics paper. "Dad, the city's holding a storytelling competition next week," I blurted out. "The theme is science and society. I thought maybe you and Mom." "Oh, that's nice, dear." He didn't look up. "Did you hear about Emily's prototype? Charles thinks it could revolutionize neural imaging." My throat tightened. Yeah, hard to miss when it's all anyone talks about. The doorbell rang before Dad could respond. Through the window, I spotted Mrs. Collins on our porch, holding what looked like old photographs. "Riley, dear," she beamed as I opened the door. "Look what I found while cleaning my attic. Your grandmother used to write for the university paper back in the day." Dad's head snapped up. "Margaret's mother never wrote for." "Oh, not your wife's mother," Mrs. Collins interrupted cheerfully. "Your mother, Harold. Quite the storyteller she was. Won awards for her science fiction pieces." The silence in the kitchen turned thick enough to cut. Dad's face went pale, then red. "Those were just hobby pieces. Nothing serious." "Really?" I snatched the yellowed newspaper clippings from Mrs. Collins' hands. "Local writers' science fiction series challenges traditional academic boundaries. Sounds pretty serious to me." Dad practically lunged for his car keys. "I have a department meeting." After he fled, Mrs. Collins patted my arm. "Your grandmother would have loved your stories, dear. She never did fit their mold either." That evening, I sat in my room, staring at my competition entry form. The prize included publication in a major literary magazine. A chance to prove I wasn't just the family disappointment. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "About earlier, I'm sorry if I seem dismissive, but you know how important this research is."
I didn't respond.
Instead, I pulled out the email I'd found in Dad's study. There was more to it than I'd initially read. Riley's creative tendencies could pose a risk to the department's reputation. Best to redirect her before she draws unwanted attention. My hands shook as I signed the competition form. Let them ignore me. Let them dismiss me. I'd show them exactly what unwanted attention looked like. Through my window, I could see Emily's lab light still burning, her silhouette bent over that microscope. In Dad's study, Mom's voice carried faintly, probably another late-night call about Emily's brilliant future. I opened my laptop and began to write, my grandmother's rebellious spirit flowing through my fingers. They wanted to bury our creative legacy?
Fine.
I'd dig it up and wave it like a flag. The story poured out of me, a tale of family secrets and scientific arrogance. By morning, they'd see exactly what a Thompson's creativity could do. I wasn't meant to be in the university library that afternoon. But there I was, hiding behind a shelf of scientific journals, listening to Dr. Whitaker destroy what was left of my family's faith in me. The Thompson legacy is at a crucial juncture. His voice oozed through the stacks. Emily's work could secure the department's future for decades. But Riley, she's becoming a liability. Charles, she's still our daughter. Mom's voice wavered, surprising me. I'd never heard uncertainty in her tone before. Margaret, be reasonable. Your position on the board is precarious enough. Having one daughter rejecting everything we stand for, it raises questions about your influence. I peered through the gap between books. Mom sat rigid in her chair, while Dad stared out the window. Dr. Whitaker paced between them like a prosecutor delivering his closing argument. "We've arranged everything," he continued. "Emily's fellowship, her future position, the funding, it's all connected. We can't risk Riley's creative pursuits undermining our credibility." Dad finally spoke. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Nothing dramatic. Just guidance. I have connections at several research institutions. Programs that could redirect her energy toward more appropriate pursuits." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Mrs. Collins. "Found more of your grandmother's writings. You need to see these." I started to back away, but knocked a book off the shelf. It hit the floor with a damning thud. "Hello." Mom called out. "Is someone there?"
I ran.
Past students buried in textbooks, past Emily's favorite study spot, past years of trying to fit into their perfect academic world. I didn't stop until I reached Mrs. Collins' front porch. She opened the door before I could knock. "Perfect timing, dear. Look what else I found." She handed me a leather-bound journal. Inside, my grandmother's handwriting filled pages with stories, sketches, and something else, designs. Beautiful, intricate drawings of sustainable housing concepts, decades ahead of their time. "She never published these," Mrs. Collins said softly. "Your grandfather thought they'd damage his reputation in the physics department." "Sound familiar?" My hands trembled as I turned the pages. "They're trying to send me away. To redirect me." "Are they now?" Mrs. Collins' eyes sparked with something fierce. "Well, perhaps it's time for some redirection of our own." She disappeared into her house, returning with a laptop. "Remember my grandson, Ethan? The environmental journalist? He's been looking for innovative sustainable design concepts for a feature piece." My grandmother's journals seemed to burn in my hands. They want to bury me in some research program, make me disappear like they did to her. Or, Mrs. Collins smiled, you could make yourself impossible to ignore. My phone buzzed again, Emily. "Where are you?" "Mom and Dad are acting weird." "Did something happen?" I ignored it, opening my grandmother's journal to a particularly stunning design. Mrs. Collins, does Ethan still want that interview? He's in town next week, actually, covering the university's sustainability initiative. She paused, watching me carefully. The same initiative Dr. Whitaker's been fighting against, if I recall correctly. Through her window, I could see my parents and Dr. Whitaker emerging from the library, heads bent in conversation. They looked like conspirators plotting a crime. In a way, they were. I think, I said slowly, it's time to show everyone what a Thompson woman can really do. Mrs. Collins squeezed my hand. Your grandmother would be proud. I opened my laptop. My grandmother's designs spread out before me. They wanted to redirect me? Fine. I'd redirect myself right into the spotlight they were so desperate to avoid. One more thing, Mrs. Collins added, her voice unusually serious. There's something about your grandmother's departure from the university that you should know. But before she could continue, Emily appeared at the fence between our houses. Riley, Mom and Dad want to talk to you. Something about your future. I met Mrs. Collins' eyes. We both knew what that conversation would entail. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of their plans for me. I had plans of my own. The eco-design firm's office felt like stepping into another world. No sterile lab coats or pretentious academic titles, just creative energy and the smell of recycled materials. I smoothed my shirt, clutching my portfolio filled with my grandmother's restored designs, updated for modern sustainability. These are remarkable, Sarah, the creative director, said, spreading the drawings across her reclaimed wood desk. The integration of solar technology with these vintage concepts, it's exactly what we're looking for. My phone buzzed, another missed call from Emily. I silenced it. When can you start?
Sarah asked.
Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the office. Riley. Ethan Brooks stood in the doorway, camera bag slung over his shoulder. Mrs. Collins' grandson, the environmental journalist. Of course he'd be here. You two know each other? Sarah asked. Not exactly, I managed, watching Ethan's eyes drift to my grandmother's designs. Wait, he said, moving closer. These look like... I've seen these before. In my grandmother's photos of... Your next article? I cut in, silently pleading with him to understand. About innovative sustainable design? He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly.
Right.
The article. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Mom. Dr. Whitaker has arranged an interview at the Neural Research Institute. Don't disappoint us again. When can you start? Sarah repeated. Tomorrow, I said firmly, ignoring the guilt churning in my stomach. Later, Ethan caught up with me in the parking lot. Those were your grandmother's designs, weren't they? The ones she never got to publish. I stopped walking. How much did Mrs. Collins tell you? Enough to know why you're here. He leaned against my car, but using her designs without credit. They drove her out of academia, I snapped. Made her bury her work because it didn't fit their precious scientific standards. Now they're trying to do the same to me. And your solution is to finish what she started. I pulled out the journal. Look at these notes. She wanted these designs used, wanted them to help people. The university buried them once. I won't let that happen again. Ethan was quiet for a moment. My article goes to print next week. If these designs are published under your name, then my family will finally see what they've been ignoring. I met his eyes. Unless you're planning to stop me? He handed back the journal. I'm planning to interview you about your innovative approach to sustainable design. Your grandmother's influence might come up naturally in the conversation. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He nodded toward the street, where Emily's car was pulling up. She got out, waving a familiar envelope. Riley, what is this? The Neural Institute called Mom about your missed interview. I'm not going, I said, instinctively stepping between her and my portfolio. This is your chance to fix things. Emily grabbed my arm. Dr. Whitaker pulled strings for you. No. He pulled strings to shut me up? I yanked away, just like they did to Dad's mother. Emily's face went blank. What are you talking about? Ask Dad about his mother's writing career. Ask him why all her designs were buried in university archives. I open my car door. Better yet, ask Dr. Whitaker why he's so invested in controlling another generation of Thompson women. Riley, wait. But I was already driving away, leaving Emily standing next to Ethan in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I saw him hand her his business card. My phone lit up with a text from Sarah. Contract ready for tomorrow. Welcome to the team. I pulled over, hands shaking on the steering wheel. No turning back now. By this time next week, my family would either have to acknowledge my path or watch as I blazed it without them. Either way, I was done living in their shadow. The weekly Thompson family dinner felt like walking into an ambush. Mom had arranged the table with her best china, always a warning sign. Emily sat practically vibrating with excitement, while Dad kept checking his phone, a slight smile playing at his lips. I pushed my untouched food around the plate, waiting for whatever bomb they were about to drop. I have news, Emily announced, right on cue. The International Science Foundation selected my research proposal. Full funding, 3 years, with Dr. Whitaker as my mentor. Mom's eyes glistened. We're so proud, darling. Charles says this could lead to a permanent position at. I got a job too. I cut in, my voice steadier than I felt. Creative director at Ecovision Design. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. That little sustainability startup? Mom's voice dripped with disdain. Riley, we've arranged everything with the Neural Institute. Dr. Whitaker has no right to arrange my life. I pulled out my grandmother's journal, just like he had no right to bury these designs 30 years ago. Dad's face went pale. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is that your mother's work is finally going to see the light of day. You can't, Emily whispered, realization dawning. Riley, those designs aren't yours too. They're exactly mine to use, I shot back. Someone in this family has to carry on her legacy. Mom stood, her chair scraping against the floor. This ends now. You will call the Neural Institute tomorrow and accept their offer. Or what? You'll bury me too. I opened the journal to a marked page. Did you know your precious Dr. Whitaker threatened to revoke Grandma's funding unless she stopped pursuing her frivolous creative endeavors? It's all right here in her notes. Dad reached for the journal. I yanked it away. I have copies, I said. And Ethan Brooks is running a story next week about innovative, sustainable design. Guess whose work will be featured? Ethan Brooks. Mom's voice sharpened. Charles mentioned him, that environmental journalist causing trouble for the university's development plans. The same plans that would destroy the wetlands Grandma tried to protect with these designs. I stood, my chair toppling backward. Funny how history repeats itself. Riley, Emily pleaded, think about what you're doing to the family. The family? I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. You mean the family that's been suffocating me my entire life? The family that buried their own mother's dreams because they didn't fit the proper academic mold. That's enough. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You will not destroy everything we've built. The Neural Institute position starts Monday. Either you take it or you're no longer welcome in this house. The ultimatum hung in the air like poison gas. Emily's eyes darted between us, her perfect world cracking at the edges. Well, I said, my voice eerily calm. I guess that makes this easy. I walked to the door, grandmother's journal clutched to my chest. Behind me, chairs scraped as my family rose. Riley, please, Mom called out. Think about your future. I turned back one last time. I am. For the first time, I really am. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Collins on her porch, watching. She gave me a slight nod as I walked to my car. My phone buzzed. Ethan. Story's ready. Sure you want to do this? I looked back at my family's house, where Emily stood in the doorway, her fellowship letter forgotten in her hand. Through the window, I could see Mom on the phone, probably calling Dr. Whitaker. Dad just stood there, looking lost, like he was seeing a ghost of his own mother walking away again. I typed back. Run it. Sometimes burning bridges lights the way forward. I started my car, my grandmother's journal safe beside me, and drove toward whatever came next. Behind me, the perfect Thompson family facade began to crumble. 3 days after Ethan's article hit, I found Emily waiting outside my tiny studio apartment. She held a copy of the magazine, my grandmother's designs splashed across the pages under my name. "You could have told me," she said quietly, "about Grandma, about everything." I unlocked my door, letting her follow me inside. My walls were covered with new designs, my own this time, inspired by but not copying my grandmother's work. "Would you have listened?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. "Or would you have run straight to Dr. Whitaker like always?" Emily flinched. "He's threatening to pull my fellowship." "Of course he is." I laughed bitterly. "Can't have another Thompson woman stepping out of line, can he?" "Riley, please." Emily's voice cracked. "The university's board is investigating his past decisions. Dad's tenure review is next month. Mom's barely leaving the house. You've destroyed everything." "I destroyed nothing." I turned to face her. "They did this. All of it. Every time they buried someone's dreams for their precious reputation. Is that what this is about? Revenge. It's about truth. Justice. For Grandma, for me, for who?" Emily stepped closer. "Because right now, it looks like you're just burning everything down without caring who gets hurt." My phone buzzed. "Ethan. Whitaker's lawyers demanding a retraction. Claims you stole intellectual property." My hands started shaking. "He can't do that. Those designs were never published." "But they were submitted to the university." Emily cut in. "Under Grandma's name. Which means, technically, they own them." The realization hit like ice water. That's why he buried them in the first place. "Riley." Emily reached for my hand. "Come home. We can fix this. Dr. Whitaker said if you publicly apologize." I yanked away. "So, that's why you're really here? To save the family name again. To save you." Emily's composure finally cracked. "You think you're the only one who felt trapped? Who wanted something different? But I learned to work within the system, to change things gradually." "You learned to comply," I spat. "To be their perfect daughter while I got pushed aside. And look where your rebellion got you." She gestured around my small apartment. No family, no career prospects, and now potential legal trouble. Was it worth it? My phone buzzed again. "Sarah from EcoVision. Need to talk about your position given recent developments." The walls seemed to close in. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, crumbling because I'd underestimated the system I was fighting against. "Get out," I whispered. "Riley, get out." I grabbed the magazine, ripping it in half. "Go back to your perfect life and your precious mentor. Tell them they win." Emily paused at the door. "You know what's ironic? Your designs, your real ones, not Grandma's, they're brilliant. You could have succeeded on your own merit. Instead, you let revenge poison everything." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Through my window, I could see her wiping tears as she walked to her car. My phone buzzed one last time. "Mrs. Collins, come over, dear. There's something about your grandmother you need to know. Something I should have told you sooner." I slumped against the wall, surrounded by my torn dreams and shattered plans. The worst part wasn't losing everything, it was realizing Emily might be right. In trying to right past wrongs, I'd become exactly what I hated. Someone who destroyed others to get ahead. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the university buildings. Somewhere in those halls, Dr. Whitaker was probably celebrating his victory. My parents were likely planning damage control. And Emily was caught in the middle, just like I'd always been. Mrs. Collins texted again. "It's about the real reason your grandmother left. And why Whitaker's so afraid of her designs being public." I stared at the message, too numb to respond. I'd wanted justice, but all I'd gotten was chaos. Now I had to decide, keep fighting a losing battle, or admit defeat and try to salvage what was left of my life. The torn magazine pages scattered across my floor like broken promises. Mrs. Collins' revelation about my grandmother still echoed in my head as I walked into EcoVision's launch event. The truth about Dr. Whitaker's past wasn't just ammunition, it was dynamite. Ready. Ethan squeezed my hand. Camera ready. The showroom gleamed with my designs. Actual ones this time, inspired by, but distinct from my grandmother's work. He's here. Emily's text flashed on my phone. My sister had chosen her side, finally. Not the one anyone expected. Dr. Whitaker's voice cut through the crowd. Quite the achievement, taking credit for another's work. He stood by my centerpiece design, a sustainable housing model that could revolutionize low-income housing. Though I suppose intellectual theft runs in the family. The room quieted. Cameras turned our way. Funny you should mention theft, Charles. I stepped forward, grandmother's journal in hand. Let's talk about the real reason you buried her designs 30 years ago. His smile flickered. Those designs belonged to the university. Because you falsified the submission dates. Emily emerged from the crowd, holding a stack of documents. After she discovered your research fraud. Whitaker's face reddened. Dr. Thompson, control your daughters. They don't need controlling. Dad's voice surprised everyone. He stood near the entrance, looking smaller somehow, more human. They need to be heard. Finally, I opened the journal to its last entry. Grandma found evidence that you falsified environmental impact data for the university's expansion projects. The same projects her sustainable designs would have made unnecessary. Ridiculous, Whitaker sputtered. Margaret, Harold, are you going to allow this spectacle? Mom stepped forward, but her usual authority was gone. Did you really think we wouldn't find out? That Riley's investigation wouldn't uncover everything. Investigation. His eyes darted between us. Why do you think I published those designs? I moved closer. We needed you to react exactly as you did, with legal threats that would force the university board to review all related documents. Emily held up her phone. Including your buried reports from 1992. The ones Grandma was about to expose before you forced her out. The crowd murmured. Cameras flashed. Whitaker's facade cracked. You have no proof. Actually, Ethan stepped forward. We have your own words. Every threatening letter you sent her. Every falsified report. Riley's article wasn't just about the designs, it was bait. And you bit, I finished. Just like you did with Grandma. Only this time, there's nowhere to bury the truth. Whitaker lunged for the journal. I stepped back, but he grabbed my arm. You ungrateful little. Dad moved faster than I'd ever seen him. Take your hands off my daughter. Security approached as Whitaker's grip loosened. His carefully constructed world crumbled around him. The board will have your complete investigation report tomorrow, Emily said. Along with my resignation from the fellowship. I'm pursuing independent research, focusing on sustainable technology. I stared at my sister, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. Riley, Mom stepped forward, her voice breaking. Your designs, your real ones, they're extraordinary. We should have seen it sooner. The security team escorted a protesting Whitaker out. Cameras followed, capturing his disgrace.
I turned to my family.
This was never about revenge. It was about truth, about making things right. No, Dad said quietly. It was about being heard, something we forgot to do a long time ago. The crowd dispersed, leaving us in a room full of possibilities. My designs, Emily's new path, our family's chance at healing. Mrs. Collins appeared at my side. Your grandmother would be proud. Not because you exposed him, but because you did it your way, with creativity and purpose. I looked around at my work, at the family I thought I'd lost, at the future I'd fought to create. Think it's too late to add her name to these designs? Not as the creator, but as the inspiration. Emily smiled. It's never too late to tell the truth. Outside, reporters gathered, hungry for the story. But the real story wasn't in the scandal or the revenge. It was in the healing that came after, in the bridges rebuilt from the ashes of what we'd burned down. 6 months after Whitaker's downfall, I stood in my grandmother's restored study, running my fingers along the spines of her newly uncovered journals. The university's investigation had revealed more than justice fraud. It had unearthed an entire archive of her work, hidden away in storage for decades. Found something interesting? Emily asked, carrying in another box of recovered papers. Everything she created is interesting. I opened a journal, smiling at the familiar sketches. Hard to believe they kept all this buried for so long. Speaking of buried, Emily pulled out an envelope. Dad found this in Whitaker's office during the clean-out. It's addressed to you. The letter was dated the day before our grandmother died. My hands trembled as I opened it. What does it say? Emily asked. I read aloud. My dearest Riley, by now you'll have discovered the truth about your gift. It's not just creativity, it's vision. The ability to see beyond what is to what could be. They'll try to bury it, just as they did mine. Don't let them. But remember, revenge destroys, while creation builds. Tose wiseli. Love, Grandma. The sound of cars pulling up outside drew us to the window. Mom and Dad were arriving for the dedication ceremony, the university's new Sustainable Design Center, built using my grandmother's original concepts and my modern adaptations. Ready. Ethan appeared in the doorway, camera in hand as always. They're waiting for the keynote speaker. I tucked the letter into my jacket pocket. Almost. Mrs. Collins joined us, looking frail but determined. Your grandmother gave me something to hold on to years ago. Said I'd know when it was time.
She handed me a small key.
The bottom drawer of her desk. She always said the best revenge is living well. The drawer contained a single notebook, its pages filled with designs far ahead of their time. But it was the dedication that caught my eye. To my granddaughters, one who will break the mold, and one who will rebuild it. Together. Emily read over my shoulder, her breath catching. She knew. Somehow she knew we'd end up here. Different paths, same destination. I said, thinking of our journey. Emily's research now focused on implementing sustainable technology, while my designs made it accessible to everyone. Outside, the ceremony crowd grew. Mom was greeting guests, her pride no longer wrapped in academic prestige, but in genuine accomplishment. Dad stood examining the building's solar features, finally seeing the beauty and innovation that crossed boundaries. You never did tell me, Emily said quietly. When did you figure out Whitaker's whole scheme? I didn't. I smiled at Mrs. Collins.
She did.
Turns out Grandma told her everything before she died. We just needed the right moment and the right bait to expose it. And now? Ethan asked, lowering his camera. I looked around the study, at the family we'd rebuilt from the ashes of secrets and silence, at the legacy we'd uncovered and the future we were creating. Now we build something new. I pulled out my latest designs, a community center that combined Emily's research with my sustainable concepts. Together this time. The ceremony began outside, but we lingered a moment longer in the study. Emily picked up one of Grandma's journals, then handed me her fellowship resignation letter, still unopened. Want to do the honors? She asked. I tore it in half, letting the pieces fall like confetti. To new beginnings. Mrs. Collins smiled knowingly. Your grandmother always said the best stories don't end. They transform. We walked out together into the bright afternoon sun, where the crowd waited for a speech about innovation and sustainability. But they'd get something more, a story about family, about healing, about finding strength in our differences. I felt Grandma's letter against my heart as I took the podium. Behind me stood the future she'd imagined, and we'd finally brought to life. Not through revenge or destruction, but through creation and truth. Sometimes the best way to honor the past isn't to avenge it, but to build something better from its foundations. The call came while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office. My assistant Miranda's voice trembled when she patched it through. Larkin, it's the police department. They say it's urgent. My name is Larkin, and that call shattered my carefully structured world into a million jagged pieces. Miss Delaney? The officer's voice was gentle but firm. I'm sorry to inform you that your father, Robert Delaney, was involved in a serious accident this morning on Route 27. The pen I'd been holding clattered to my desk. Is he? I couldn't finish the sentence. I'm very sorry. He didn't survive the impact. The world tilted sideways. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who showed me how to read financial statements when I was 12, who still called me princess, even though I was 32, was gone.
Just like that.
I don't remember ending the call or walking out of my office. The next thing I knew, my husband Nolan was rushing through the lobby of Delaney Industries, his usually perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. He wrapped his arms around me, and I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne. "I left as soon as Miranda called," he whispered. "What do you need?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was my father's attorney, Marcus. "Larkin, I just heard. I know this is terrible timing, but there are some immediate matters we need to discuss regarding the company." I pulled away from Nolan, wiping my eyes.
Now.
"The board is already calling. Your father was, well, he was the heart of this company. People are scared." Nolan squeezed my hand. "You don't have to do this right now." But I did. Dad had built this company from nothing, pouring 30 years of his life into it. I couldn't let it falter, not even for a day of grief. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I told Marcus. Nolan's face darkened slightly. "Let me come with you. You shouldn't be alone." I hesitated. Nolan had always been supportive of my career, but lately, I'd noticed a tension whenever the company came up. Maybe it was the stark contrast between his teacher's salary and my executive position. Or maybe it was his mother Vera's constant hints about family businesses belonging to the whole family. "I think I need to handle this part alone," I said gently. He stepped back, jaw tightening. "Of course. I'll go tell Mom and Sage the news. They'll want to help with arrangements." The way he said it made my skin prickle. My father had never quite warmed to Vera and Sage, though he'd been unfailingly polite. Something about them made him uneasy, though he never said why. In Marcus's office, surrounded by leather-bound law books and the faint smell of coffee, I learned that Dad had left me controlling interest in the company. The news shouldn't have surprised me. I'd been working alongside him for years, learning every aspect of the business. But somehow, it felt overwhelming. "There's something else," Marcus said, sliding an envelope across his desk. "Your father left this for you. He updated his will last month and insisted this be given to you after." I stared at the envelope, my name written in Dad's familiar scrawl. I couldn't bring myself to open it yet. My phone buzzed again, Nolan letting me know his family was gathering at our house. "Mom's making calls," his text read. "She says we need to discuss the future." The future. Such a simple word for such a complicated mess. I tucked the letter into my bag, thanked Marcus, and headed home. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's death wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. I just didn't know yet how right I was. 3 days after Dad's funeral, I hosted a family dinner. It wasn't my idea. Vera insisted we needed to come together as family during this difficult time. I was still numb, moving through the motions of grief while trying to keep the company stable, but I couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful. The tension started before the first course was even served. I was in the kitchen, plating the appetizers, when I overheard Vera's voice drift in from the dining room. "It's such a shame Robert didn't have a son," she was saying. "A family business needs a strong male presence. Not that Larkin isn't capable, of course, but—" "Mom." Nolan cut in, but his protest sounded weak. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. My best friend Marin, who'd come early to help, squeezed my shoulder. "Don't let her get to you," she whispered. "That's exactly what she wants." I forced a smile and carried the plates out. Sage, Nolan's sister, was sprawled in my father's chair, his favorite spot at the head of the table. She didn't move when I entered. "Something smells amazing," Sage chirped, scrolling through her phone. "Though I hope it's not too heavy. I'm trying this new diet." "You could move," I suggested quietly, nodding at Dad's chair. Sage blinked up at me, all innocence.
"Oh,
"Is this spot special?" "It was Dad's chair," Nolan explained, finally speaking up. "Maybe you could." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Sage jumped up, but her expression didn't match her words. "I'm just so comfortable here." It feels right, doesn't it? Like family? The room went quiet. I set down the plates with careful precision, fighting to keep my composure. Vera cleared her throat. Speaking of family, she began, Nolan and I were discussing the company earlier. You know, he has excellent management experience from running the science department at his school. It's not quite the same thing, I said carefully. But family is family, Vera pressed. And now that you're in charge, surely you'll want trusted people around you? People who share your values. I caught Nolan's eye across the table. He looked away. The company has a strong management team, I replied. Dad built it carefully over decades. Yes, but times change. Vera smiled, all teeth. Fresh blood, new perspectives. And Sage has her business degree. From an online college, Marin muttered under her breath. Sage shot her a glare. I heard that. Ladies, Nolan interrupted. Maybe we could talk about something else? Larkin's still grieving. Of course, Vera patted my hand. We just want to help, dear. Your father would have wanted the company to benefit the whole family. I pulled my hand away, standing abruptly. I need to check on the main course. In the kitchen, I braced myself against the sink, breathing deeply.
Marin followed me in.
They're vultures, she said flatly. You see that, right? They're my family now, I replied, but the words felt hollow. No, they're Nolan's family. And where was he when Vera was basically calling you incompetent? Or when Sage was deliberately provoking you? I didn't answer. Through the kitchen door, I could hear Vera's voice again, lower now. She's overwhelmed, poor thing. She'll need guidance. Strong guidance. Mom, please, Nolan's voice, still weak, still unwilling to take a real stand. I reached into my pocket, touching Dad's unopened letter. I hadn't been able to read it yet, it felt too final. But standing there, listening to them plot and plan in my own home, I realized I couldn't put it off much longer. The main course is going to burn, I said finally. Screw the main course, Marin replied. What are you going to do about them? I straightened my shoulders, remembering how Dad used to say that respect had to be earned, not demanded. First, we're going to serve dinner. Then tomorrow, I'm going to show them exactly what kind of leader I can be. But as I carried out the main course, I caught Nolan watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between worry and calculation. And I wondered if I really knew my husband at all. The email from James Chun, one of our longest-serving board members, hit me like a punch to the gut. I read it 3 times in my office, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Larkin, I feel obligated to inform you about a concerning conversation with Vera Price. She suggested that without proper family oversight of the company's operations, she might need to pursue legal options regarding your father's estate. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the rest of the message. James had attached screenshots of emails, dozens of them. Vera had been reaching out to board members for weeks, even before Dad's funeral, pushing for positions for both Nolan and Sage. My phone buzzed. Marin, have you checked your email? You knew about this? I just heard from Rita in HR. Vera's been calling department heads too, asking about potential restructuring. She's building a case that you're too inexperienced to run things alone. I closed my eyes, remembering the dinner 2 nights ago. All those subtle hints and careful comments, they weren't just idle talk. They were laying groundwork. Where's Nolan? Marin asked. Parent-teacher conferences. I checked the time. He should be home soon. Don't confront him alone. I can come over. I need to handle this myself. I heard his key in the door just after 7. He looked tired, his tie loosened, carrying a stack of papers. For a moment, I almost wavered. This was my husband, the man who'd held me through Mom's death, who brought me coffee every morning, who— Your mother's been contacting the board, I said without preamble. He set down his papers slowly. Larkin. Did you know? His hesitation was answer enough. She's trying to help, he said finally. We all are. You're under so much pressure. By threatening legal action? By undermining me to my own board. That's not. She wouldn't actually sue. She's just worried about the family's future. Our future. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the emails. Read them. He did, his face growing paler. This is just Mom being Mom.
You know how she gets.
No, this is your mother trying to force her way into my father's company. And you knew. You've known all along. What was I supposed to do? His voice cracked. She's my mother. And she's right, I should be doing more. I'm your husband, but I'm just a teacher while you're running this huge company. So this is about your ego? This is about family. He slammed his hand on the counter, making me jump. Your father's gone, Larkin. The company needs strong leadership. And you think that's you? Or Sage, with her online degree and 0 work experience? At least we're thinking about the whole family's needs. You're so caught up in your father's legacy. Because it matters. I was shouting now too. Because he built something real, something that matters to hundreds of employees and their families. And your mother wants to treat it like a personal ATM. That's not fair. Then explain it to me, Nolan. Explain why your mother is threatening legal action against her daughter-in-law less than 2 weeks after my father died. He couldn't meet my eyes. She's just trying to secure our future. In that moment, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the way he said, our, like he and his family were one unit, and I was something else entirely. I need you to leave, I said quietly.
What?
Pack a bag. Go to your mother's. I need time to think. Larkin, don't do this. Either you leave now, or I call Marin and have her come help me pack my things instead. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked upstairs without another word. I listened to him moving around, packing, fighting the urge to run up and tell him to stay, to fix this. But Dad's voice echoed in my head. Trust your gut, princess. When something feels wrong in business or in life, it usually is. I pulled out his letter, still unopened. Whatever guidance he'd left me, whatever wisdom he'd wanted to share, I was ready to hear it now. Because this wasn't just about the company anymore. This was war. After Nolan left, I finally opened Dad's letter. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, his familiar handwriting swimming before my eyes. My dearest Larkin, if you're reading this, I need you to check something for me. In the office safe, behind the Delaney Industries Incorporation papers, there's a blue folder. I was in my car before finishing the letter. The office was dark and empty when I arrived, but I knew every inch of this building. Dad's office still smelled like his aftershave. The safe clicked open. Behind the incorporation papers, just as he'd said, was a worn blue folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and a private investigator's report dated 3 months ago. My phone rang, making me jump. Marin, where are you? I went by your house, but... Dad knew. I cut her off, my voice hollow. He knew something was wrong. He hired someone to investigate the prices. Silence on the line. Then, what did he find? I spread the papers across Dad's desk. Vera's broke. She remortgaged her house twice. Sage has maxed out credit cards in 3 different names. And Nolan. My throat tightened. Nolan's been meeting with corporate lawyers since last year. What kind of lawyers? The kind that specialize in shareholder disputes and inheritance claims. The office door creaked. I spun around to find James Chen standing there, looking grave. I thought I might find you here, he said quietly. There's something else you need to know. I put the phone on speaker as James sat down. He looked older than he had at the board meeting last week. Your father came to me about his suspicions, James began. He was planning to update the company bylaws, add provisions to protect against hostile takeovers from within the family. But he didn't get the chance, I whispered. The accident. Marin's voice crackled through the speaker. Larkin, you don't think. The police report's in here too, I said, holding up a paper with shaking hands. Dad's brake lines were damaged. They ruled it inconclusive. But James leaned forward. The day before the accident, your father told me he was going to confront Nolan directly. He said he had proof that the prices were planning something. My world tilted sideways. The photographs scattered across the desk seemed to mock me. Nolan leaving law offices, Vera meeting with board members in secret. Sage's shopping sprees with money she didn't have. I should have seen it, I said. All those times Vera pushed for family unity when Nolan insisted on joining board meetings. You saw what they wanted you to see, Marin said firmly. What matters is what you do now. My phone buzzed with a text. Nolan, Mom wants to meet tomorrow. To talk things through as a family. Please, Larkin, give us a chance to explain. I stared at the message, remembering all the little moments, how Nolan always seemed to know about board decisions before I told him. How Vera had started calling my father's old friends months ago, how Sage had casually mentioned moving closer to the office. They're planning something, I said. This meeting tomorrow, it's a trap. Then set one of your own, Marin replied. James nodded slowly. Your father left you everything for a reason, Larkin. He trusted you to protect his legacy. I looked around the office. At Dad's degrees on the wall, the photo of him teaching me to ride a bike, the empire he'd built from nothing. Then I looked down at the evidence he'd gathered, his final gift to me. Tell Nolan I'll meet them, I said, already formulating a plan. But not tomorrow. I need time to prepare. Prepare what? Marin asked. I gathered the papers, tucking them safely away. Dad taught me that in business, like in chess, you have to think 3 moves ahead. They want to play games?
Fine.
But they're about to learn they're not the only ones who can set a trap. As I locked the office door, I swore I could smell Dad's aftershave again, stronger this time. Like he was right there with me, watching, waiting to see what I would do next. I chose the conference room overlooking the city for our meeting. Dad always said the view reminded him of how far we'd come, from a tiny startup to the gleaming skyscraper we now occupied. It seemed fitting for what I was about to do. Vera arrived first, perfectly coiffed, and wearing what looked like a new designer suit. Sage trailed behind her, scrolling through her phone. Nolan came last, his tie slightly crooked, a detail I would have fixed just days ago. Darling, Vera started, reaching for my hands. We're so glad you're ready to talk. I stepped back. Please sit down. James Chun and our corporate counsel, Sarah Martinez, entered silently, taking seats at the far end of the table. Vera's smile flickered. I wasn't aware this was a formal meeting, she said carefully. Neither was I, Nolan added, frowning at the lawyers. I opened the blue folder in front of me. Let's talk about Dad's accident. The room went still. Sage finally looked up from her phone. The brake lines were damaged. I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Interesting timing, considering he was planning to change the company bylaws the next day. What are you implying? Vera's voice had lost its warmth. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I spread out the bank statements, the photographs, the investigators' reports. Like the fact that you're nearly bankrupt. Or that Nolan's been meeting with corporate lawyers specializing in hostile takeovers. Those meetings were about school funding, Nolan protested, but his face had gone pale. Really? Because I have recordings. I pressed play on my phone, and Nolan's voice filled the room. Once we secure board positions, we can start restructuring. My wife won't see it coming. Sage stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't. Sit down. Vera snapped, her mask finally cracking. Larkin, dear, you're obviously struggling with grief. Seeing conspiracies where there's only family trying to help. Help yourselves, you mean? I pulled out more documents. Dad knew what you were planning. He was gathering evidence. And then, conveniently, he had an accident. You think we killed him? Nolan's voice cracked. Your own husband? I think you're capable of anything to get what you want. I turned to Sarah. Please explain their options. Sarah cleared her throat. Option 1. You sign these papers, agreeing to sever all ties with Delaney Industries. You'll receive a one-time settlement in exchange for waiving any future claims on the company or estate. Or, Vera's eyes had gone cold. Or we turn over all evidence of your financial fraud, corporate espionage, and the ongoing investigation into Robert Delaney's death to the authorities. You wouldn't dare, Sage whispered. We're family. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family doesn't plot behind each other's backs. Family doesn't try to steal what others have built. And family certainly doesn't celebrate at a funeral. What are you talking about? Nolan asked. I pulled out one final photograph. Vera, Sage, and Nolan toasting with champagne in Vera's kitchen the night after Dad's funeral. Their smiles said everything. You have until tomorrow morning to decide, I said, standing. Choose carefully. You'll regret this, Vera hissed, her composure completely gone. You have no idea what we're capable of. Actually, I do. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Nolan? I've already filed for divorce. Consider yourself served. I walked out, leaving them with the lawyers and their choices. In the elevator, my hands finally started shaking. Marin was waiting in my office. How did it go? I looked out at the city Dad had loved so much. He always said the hardest part of business wasn't making money. It was knowing who to trust. And now I know exactly who to trust. I touched the window, remembering Dad's words about legacy and integrity, and who to destroy. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of red. It felt like an ending and a beginning all at once. Tomorrow would bring either their surrender or war. I was ready for either. The deadline came and went. No signatures. No surrender. Just silence, until my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Turn on the news. Channel 7 was running a special report about Delaney Industries. The headline made my blood run cold. Family fortune or family fraud? Questions arise about Robert Delaney's death. Vera's face filled the screen, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. We're devastated by these revelations, she sobbed. To think that Robert's own daughter might have. The break lines. My phone exploded with notifications. Board members, employees, reporters, all wanting answers. Marin burst into my office. They're saying you tampered with your father's car, she gasped. That you couldn't wait to take control of the company. I couldn't breathe. On my desk, more headlines flashed across my laptop. Sources claim Larkin Delaney expressed frustration with father's leadership. Financial records show unusual transfers days before CEO's death. They planted evidence, I whispered. They're using everything I threatened them with, but twisting it around. My office door opened again. James' chin looked grim. The board's calling an emergency meeting. They're voting on temporary suspension of leadership. They can't do that. I have controlling interests. They're citing the emergency clause. Pending investigation into. He couldn't finish. My phone buzzed. Nolan, it didn't have to be this way. We can still fix this. Meet me at home. Just us. Don't, Marin warned, reading over my shoulder. But I was already grabbing my keys. I had to know why, had to understand how the man I'd loved could do this. The drive home felt endless. Nolan was waiting in our kitchen. Our perfect kitchen where we'd hosted dinner parties and Sunday brunches, where he'd proposed on one knee 5 years ago. You really think I kill my own father? My voice cracked. Of course not. He stepped closer. But Mom, she's desperate. The money problems, Sage's debts. She saw an opportunity. And you just went along with it? I tried to be the bridge between our families. But you never saw me, Larkin. I was just the teacher, the trophy husband who couldn't measure up to the great Robert Delaney's daughter. So you decided to destroy me instead? We can still fix this.
He reached for my hand.
Sign over 40% of the company. Mom will retract her statement. We'll say it was all a misunderstanding, grief making everyone crazy. We can even stay married, keep up appearances. I jerked away. You really think I'd choose you over Dad's legacy? Choose carefully, he said softly. Because if you don't, tomorrow's headline will be about how you're following in your mother's footsteps. How depression runs in families. How tragic it is when history repeats. The threat hit like a physical blow. Mom's suicide had been private, protected. Until now. You wouldn't. Mom would. And does it matter? Once it's out there, the damage is done. The board won't risk a mentally unstable CEO. Sign the papers, Larkin. It's over. My phone buzzed again, James, probably with news of the board's vote. I let it ring. I'll have the papers drawn up, Nolan continued. We can sign tomorrow. Start fresh. I looked around our kitchen, remembering all the lies that had been served here along with family dinners. Remembering Dad's words about trust and legacy. Tomorrow, I echoed, already planning my next move. He smiled, thinking he'd won. I'll tell Mom. She'll be relieved. I walked out without looking back, drove until I reached Dad's favorite spot, overlooking the city. The same view as my office, but somehow clearer now. My phone showed 57 missed calls. The news was still running Vera's tearful interview. Tomorrow, they'd drag Mom's memory through the mud. Unless I pulled out Dad's letter again, reading past the part about the blue folder to something I'd missed before. Remember, Princess, sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters. I finally understood what he meant, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. I arrived at the office before dawn, Dad's final instructions clear in my mind. By 8, every major financial network was carrying the story. Delaney Industries CEO calls emergency press conference. Vera and Nolan burst into my office just as I finished preparing. What are you doing? Nolan demanded. Exactly what Dad taught me to do. I straightened my jacket. I'm telling the truth. The press conference room was packed. Cameras flashed as I took the podium, Vera and Nolan hovering at the back like vultures waiting for a kill. My father, Robert Delaney, built this company on 2 principles: integrity and transparency. My voice carried clear and strong. Today, I'm honoring both. I nodded to James, who started the video. On the massive screen behind me, security footage began to play. Footage from Dad's private office camera system that he'd never told anyone about, except in his letter to me. The room went silent as they watched Vera and Nolan in Dad's office the night before his death, arguing with him about the company's future. You can't cut us out. Vera's voice rang through the speakers. After everything we've done to position ourselves, I won't let you steal my daughter's birthright. Dad's voice, strong and clear. I know about the debts, Vera. The schemes. It ends now. Nolan's face on the screen was twisted with rage. You think you can just throw us away? We're family. No, Dad replied. You're parasites. The footage cut to later that night, Nolan in the parking garage under Dad's car. The timestamp clearly visible. Gasps filled the room. Reporters were frantically typing on their phones. At the back, Vera's face had gone chalk white. The police have already received this footage, I continued, along with evidence of extensive financial fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. You're destroying your own marriage, Nolan shouted from the back. Everything we built. We built nothing. I cut him off. You plotted and schemed while I actually worked. The only thing you built was a web of lies. Larkin, please. Vera stepped forward, tears already starting. Think about what you're doing to our family. Family? I laughed, and the sound echoed through the silent room. Let me show you what family really means. The screen changed again, this time showing years of secret recordings. Vera and Sage spending company money on luxury purchases. Nolan meeting with corporate raiders. The champagne toast after Dad's funeral. My father knew what you were planning, I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. He left me everything I needed to expose you. But first he wanted me to see who you really were. You'll regret this, Nolan snarled, starting forward. Security stepped between us. In the crowd, I could see police officers moving in.
No, Nolan.
You'll regret it. You and your family wanted my company. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Congratulations. You're about to become majority shareholders of your own prison sentences. The officers reached them as reporters shouted questions. Vera was crying for real now as handcuffs clicked into place. Sage, who'd just arrived, screamed as she was detained. Nolan locked eyes with me one last time as they led him away. I did love you, you know. No, I replied quietly. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. After they were gone, I addressed the press again. Delaney Industries will continue operating with full transparency. Our books are open. our practices ethical, and our commitment to integrity absolute, just as my father wanted. Hours later, after the statements and questions and legal proceedings, I sat alone in Dad's office. The sun was setting over the city he'd loved so much. "You were right, Dad," I whispered to the empty room. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters." My phone buzzed. Marin, sending me headlines from the evening news. Delaney Industries stand strong. Corporate conspiracy exposed and justice served. CEO honors father's legacy. I smiled, touching Dad's nameplate on the desk. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I had done what needed to be done. I had protected his legacy, not just the company, but the principles he lived by. And in doing so, I'd found my own. 1 year later, I stood in the same conference room where I'd exposed Nolan and his family, but everything felt different. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the faces of our employees as I announced the company's new profit-sharing program. My father believed that success should lift everyone, I told them. Today, we're making that belief concrete. After the applause died down and the room cleared, Marin lingered behind. "Have you seen the news?" I had. Nolan had taken a plea deal, testifying against Vera in exchange for a reduced sentence. Sage had avoided jail time, but was working retail to pay off her debts. And Vera, the mastermind, would spend the next decade behind bars. "The house sold yesterday," I said, gathering my papers. Final tie cut. "You okay?" I considered the question as we walked to my office. The past year had been a blur of rebuilding, not just the company, but myself. Every morning, I'd walked past the security footage still saved on my computer, reminding myself that sometimes the people closest to you can be the biggest threats. "I visited Mom's grave last week," I said instead of answering. First time since everything happened. Told her about Dad's letter, about how he protected me even after he was gone. And I finally understood something. Mom's depression wasn't weakness, like Vera tried to paint it. She saw things in people that others missed. Maybe that's why she struggled so much. My phone buzzed, a text from James Chun. The board meeting would start soon. But first, I had something to do. "Come with me?" We took the elevator to the lobby, where a crew was installing new lettering on the wall. The company's mission statement, written in elegant gold. "Integrity is not what we do, but who we are." Below it, smaller but just as bright, "In memory of Robert Delaney, who taught us that true legacy lives in our actions." "He would have loved this," Marin said softly. "Yeah." I touched the letters gently. "But that's not what I wanted to show you." I led her to my car, drove through the city until we reached a familiar neighborhood. Pulled up in front of a small house with a "for sale" sign in the yard. "Your old house." Marin frowned. "I thought you'd never want to see it again." "I bought it yesterday." I got out of the car, walked up the familiar path. "Not to live in. For this." I handed her a folder. Plans for converting the house into a shelter for women escaping financial abuse. A place where they could learn business skills, rebuild their lives, find their strength. "Dad protected me with evidence and security cameras," I explained. "But not everyone has that. Some people just need a chance to stand on their own feet." "Using your revenge to help others," Marin smiled. "Your dad would be proud." "It's not about revenge anymore." I looked at the house, where I'd once thought I was building a future with Nolan. "It's about making something better from something broken." My phone buzzed again. Time for the board meeting. As we drove back, I thought about Dad's final letter, now framed in my office. About how he'd known I'd face hard choices, but trusted me to make the right ones. "You know what's funny?" I said as we pulled into the parking garage, a different spot than where Dad had parked that last day. Nolan and Vera thought Dad's legacy was the company, but it wasn't. No. It was learning how to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. I smiled, thinking of the shelter plans, of the profit-sharing program, of all the changes ahead, and then building something better from the ashes. We stepped into the elevator, heading up to face whatever challenges waited next. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I knew exactly who I was and what I stood for. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something they can never touch, never corrupt, never understand. Something that lasts. I never expected my father's voice to sound so broken. After 8 years of silence, his call came while I was elbow-deep in garden soil, trying to save my withering tomato plants. The universe has a twisted sense of humor like that. My name is Elena, and until today, I thought I had my life figured out. I help run a community center in Portland, live in a cozy apartment with too many houseplants, and have successfully avoided anything to do with my father since I was 22. But here I was, dirt under my fingernails, listening to him sob through my phone speaker. Elena, please. I know I have no right to ask, but I need your help. His voice cracked. Everything's gone. The house, the business, Vivian's. Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended, making my neighbor's cat startle from its perch on my balcony railing. You're right. You have no right. The silence that followed felt heavy, loaded with 8 years of missed birthdays, holidays, and the weight of choosing his new wife over his grieving daughter. I could hear him breathing, that familiar pattern that used to signal he was trying not to cry when I was little. Your grandmother told me you're doing well, he continued softly. The community work, your own place. Mabel should know better than to talk about me with you. I yanked a weed with more force than necessary, imagining it was Vivian's perfectly manicured hand reaching for my father's wallet. What happened to all your money? Did your precious wife finally spend it all? He cleared his throat. It's complicated. There are things you don't understand about Vivian, about what happened after your mother. Don't. My hands were shaking now. Don't you dare bring Mom into this. A knock at my door made me jump.
Through the glass, I could see Ms.
Harper from apartment 3B, probably coming to share another batch of her stress-baked cookies. She'd been my high school English teacher before retiring, and now she lived 3 doors down, still trying to take care of everyone. Elena? My father's voice pulled me back. I know I failed you, but this isn't about me or Vivian anymore. There are people, dangerous people involved. I thought I could handle it, protect everyone, but I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. Protect everyone? Like you protected me when Vivian threw out all of Mom's photos? Or when she convinced you to sell Mom's violin collection because it was cluttering up the house? The knocking grew more insistent. Ms. Harper's worried face peered through the glass, holding what looked like a newspaper. 24 hours, my father said quietly. That's all I'm asking for. Come to the house. Let me explain everything. After that, if you still want nothing to do with us, I'll understand. The house you're losing, you mean? The words tasted bitter. Please, Elena. I know I don't deserve your help, but this is bigger than our problems. People could get hurt. Ms. Harper was now waving the newspaper urgently. I could see the local section's headline even from where I sat. Local business mogul linked to missing funds. My stomach dropped as I recognized my father's company name in smaller print below. 24 hours, I repeated, my voice hollow. That's it. And I'm not doing this for you or Vivian. I'm doing it because... I trailed off, not sure why I was agreeing at all. I know, he said softly. Thank you. After hanging up, I sat there among my plants, soil still clinging to my trembling hands. Ms. Harper was still waiting, concern etched on her face. Whatever was in that newspaper, whatever my father had gotten himself into, I had a feeling my carefully constructed peace was about to shatter. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to finally make Vivian pay for everything she'd taken from us. Ms. Harper's newspaper article felt like a bomb in my hands. Local business mogul Graham Carson accused of investment fraud. Below that, in smaller text, multiple investors report missing funds. FBI investigation pending. You need to see this, Ms. Harper said, settling into my worn armchair. Her reading glasses dangled from a chain around her neck, catching the afternoon light. Your grandmother called me this morning. She's worried. I skimmed the article, my throat tightening with each paragraph. Millions missing. Suspicious transfers. Offshore accounts. The words blurred together, but one quote stood out. Sources close to the investigation suggest Vivian Blake Carson may have orchestrated several key transactions. Of course she did, I muttered, crumpling the paper's edge. I always knew she was after his money. MS. Harper leaned forward, her expression gentle but firm. Elena, do you remember that essay you wrote in my class? The one about your mother's violin concerts. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Mom in her black dress, bow dancing across strings, Dad beaming from the front row. I was 14 then, still whole, still part of a family that made sense. 3 months, I said, my voice barely steady. That's how long he waited after Mom died before bringing Vivian home. 3 months. I remember. MS. Harper's voice softened. I also remember how quickly she started changing things. The memories flooded back unbidden. Vivian's first dinner with us, her perfectly manicured hands rearranging Mom's carefully curated place settings. These are a bit dated, don't you think, Graham? We should get something more modern. Dad had just nodded, that vacant smile I'd come to hate spreading across his face. By the next week, Mom's china was gone, replaced by sleek, soulless plates that could have come from any department store. My phone buzzed. A text from Mabel. Coming over. Need to talk about your father. Don't do anything rash. Too late, I muttered, showing MS. Harper the message. I already told him I'd give him 24 hours to explain. Good. MS. Harper's response surprised me. Maybe it's time he got some answers. Or maybe it's time Vivian finally faces consequences. I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Yes. Harper's expression shifted. There's something else you should know. She pulled out another piece of paper, this one older, creased. Your grandmother gave me this years ago, asked me to hold on to it until the right time. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Mom's handwriting jumped out at me, elegant and familiar. My dearest Graham, if you're reading this, then Vivian has finally made her move. I knew she would eventually. The question is, will you see it for what it is this time? Love always. Sarah. The date on the letter was 2 weeks before Mom's accident. What? I struggled to form words. What does this mean? A knock at the door interrupted us. Through the glass, I saw Mabel's familiar silhouette, but she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a tall man in a dark suit, his FBI badge clearly visible on his belt. MS. Carson, he called through the door. I'm Agent Roberts. We need to talk about your father's business dealings and about a series of emails between your mother and Vivian Blake dating back to 2013. MS. Harper's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Sometimes, she said quietly, the truth is more complicated than we want it to be. I stood, legs unsteady, moving toward the door. The paper in my hand felt impossibly heavy. Whatever game Vivian was playing, whatever truth lay behind my mother's words, one thing was clear. My 24 hours with Dad had just become about much more than missing money. As I reached for the doorknob, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Your mother tried to warn him. Don't make her mistake. V. The game was changing, and I wasn't sure anymore who was playing whom. Agent Robert sat across from me in my small kitchen, his presence making the room feel even smaller. Mabel's hand rested protectively on my shoulder as I stared at the stack of emails he'd laid out on the table. Your mother and Vivian Blake were in contact for months before your mother's death, he said, sliding one particular email forward. We believe these communications might be relevant to our current investigation. The timestamp made my chest tight. 3:47 a.m., the morning of Mom's accident. The subject line read, Final warning. I can't do this, I whispered, but Mabel's grip tightened. You have to, sweetheart. Sarah, your mother would want you to know. The email was brief. If anything happens to me, the documents are in the violin.
He'll know which one. S.
What violin? Agent Roberts asked. Our investigation shows Mrs. Carson owned several valuable instruments. A bitter laugh escaped me.
Owned.
Past tense. Vivian sold them all within a year of moving in. Said they were collecting dust. All except one, Mabel said quietly. The Stradivarius copy. The one your father keeps in his office. My head snapped up. What? She always said it was sold to a collector in Vienna. Agent Roberts leaned forward. Ms. Carson, we have reason to believe your stepmother has been operating a sophisticated investment scheme for years. But these emails suggest your mother might have uncovered something even bigger.
My phone buzzed again.
Another message from Vivian. The violin was just the beginning. Your mother knew too much. Don't make her mistake. Elena. Mabel's voice sounded worried. What is it? I handed my phone to Agent Roberts, who quickly read the message. We'll need to trace this number. Ms. Carson, I strongly advise against meeting with your father until we...
No.
I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I need to see that violin.
Now.
Elena. Ms. Harper warned from her corner of the kitchen. Think about what you're doing. I am thinking. I grabbed my keys. I'm thinking about how Vivian swept into our lives right after Mom started asking questions about Dad's business. I'm thinking about how convenient it was that Mom's brake lines failed right after she sent that email. The room went silent. We'd never said it out loud before, the possibility that Mom's accident wasn't an accident at all. Agent Roberts stood. I'll need to call this in. We should wait for backup. 24 hours, I said, echoing my promise to Dad. That's what I gave him. And now I know exactly where to start looking. My phone buzzed one final time. A photo message from Vivian, Mom's Stradivarius copy, sitting on Dad's desk. Next to it lay today's newspaper. She's baiting you. A mess. Harper said softly. I know. I showed them the photo. But for the first time, I think I'm starting to understand why. Agent Roberts studied the image. This could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, I said, grabbing my jacket. The question is, who's trapping whom? Mabel moved to block the door. Your mother wouldn't want you putting yourself in danger. My mother, I said, gently moving past her, left me a message in that violin. And after 8 years, I'm finally going to hear what she was trying to tell us. As I headed for my car, Agent Roberts called out, We'll have agents surrounding the house within the hour. Don't do anything reckless. But I was already sliding behind the wheel, Mom's last email burning in my mind. Whatever documents she'd hidden, whatever truth Vivian was so afraid of, it all came down to that violin. The one piece of Mom that Vivian hadn't managed to erase. My phone lit up with one final message. Time's running out, Elena. For all of us.
V.
I started the engine, the same question echoing in my head. Was I walking into Vivian's trap, or was she finally walking into mine? The familiar gates of my childhood home loomed before me, their once pristine white paint now peeling. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I noticed Vivian's Mercedes was missing, but Dad's old Jaguar sat in its usual spot. My key still worked. 8 years, and they'd never changed the locks. The house felt different, smaller, darker. Family photos lined the walls, but they were all new. Dad and Vivian at charity galas, on vacation, at business functions. It was like my childhood had been carefully erased, painted over with their perfect new life. Dad's office door was ajar. I heard his voice before I saw him, low and urgent. No, you don't understand. She's coming here. Elena's coming here. I pushed the door open. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his back to me. The violin case sat prominently on his desk, just like in Vivian's photo. I have to go, he said quickly, turning. She's here. The years hadn't been kind to him. His hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines carved valleys around his mouth. Elena, he breathed, taking a step forward. I held up my hand. Don't.
Just.
Don't. My eyes fixed on the violin case. Open it. What?
The violin.
Mom's Stradivarius copy. Open it. His face paled. How did you? Vivian's been texting me. I moved toward the desk. Funny how she never mentioned keeping this one when she sold all the others. Must be pretty special. Elena, wait.
His voice cracked.
There are things you don't understand. Then help me understand. I reached for the case. Why did Mom email Vivian the morning she died? What documents was she talking about? The look of shock on his face was answer enough. He hadn't known about the email. My fingers traced the familiar leather of the case. Mom used to let me open it when I was little, teaching me the proper way to handle the latches. As I reached for them now, Dad's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. "Please," he whispered. "Don't." A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I saw Vivian striding up the path, her face set in grim determination. But it was the man following her that made my blood run cold, Agent Roberts. "You called the FBI?" Dad's grip tightened. "No," I said slowly, realization dawning. But Vivian did. The front door opened. Footsteps echoed through the house. "Graham?" Vivian's voice carried up the stairs. "Is she here?" Dad's eyes darted between me and the violin case. "Whatever you think you know." "I know Mom was trying to warn you." I twisted free of his grip. "I know she died right after sending that email. And I know Vivian's been waiting for me to figure it out." The office door burst open. Vivian stood there, Agent Roberts just behind her. But something was wrong. The badge on his belt was different from before. "That's not Agent Roberts," I said, backing away. "Is it?" Vivian's perfectly painted lips curved into a sad smile. "Your mother was just as quick. Must run in the family." "Enough games," the fake agent snapped. "Where are the documents?" Dad moved between us. "Leave her out of this. She doesn't know anything." "No," Vivian said softly. "But she will." She turned to me, her mask finally cracking. "Your mother made me promise to protect you. Both of you. From him." She jerked her head toward the man we'd thought was Agent Roberts. "The real Agent Roberts is probably at your apartment by now," she continued. "But we needed to get here first. To the violin." My hand found the case's latch. One click, and whatever truth Mom died protecting would finally come to light. "Elena," Dad pleaded one last time. "Some truths are better left buried." But as I opened the case, I realized Mom had known better. Some truths demand to be heard, no matter the cost. The violin lay there, beautiful as ever. And tucked inside its hollow body, visible through the F-holes, was a flash drive with a single word written on it. Truth. The fake Agent Roberts reached for the flash drive, but Vivian was faster. In one fluid motion, she knocked the violin case off the desk, sending it crashing to the floor. The flash drive skittered under a bookshelf. "Run," she commanded, positioning herself between us and the imposter. Her perfectly maintained facade had vanished, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. Dad grabbed my arm. "The study. Now." "Not without." "Your mother's papers are in the study," Vivian cut in, her eyes never leaving the man before her. "The real ones. The ones that got her killed." The fake agent pulled out a gun. "Nobody's going anywhere." 8 years, Vivian said, her voice eerily calm. 8 years I've waited for this moment. Did you really think Sarah wouldn't have a backup plan? A commotion downstairs made us all freeze. Multiple footsteps, voices calling out. "FBI, clear the ground floor." The imposter's face twisted. He lunged for me, but Dad shoved me aside, taking the impact. They crashed into the bookshelf, sending volumes raining down. The flash drive lay exposed. I dove for it just as Vivian shouted, "Behind you!" Something hard struck my shoulder. Pain exploded through my arm. The fake agent's shoe pressed into my back, pinning me down. "Like mother, like daughter," he sneered. "Always sticking your noses where they don't belong." "Get off her." Dad's voice cracked with desperation. "Or what, Graham? You'll finally grow a spine? Tell her how you knew, how you suspected what happened to Sarah, but were too afraid to act." The pressure on my back increased. I could barely breathe. "I didn't know," Dad whispered. I thought it was really an accident. But I knew," Vivian said. Her heels clicked on the hardwood as she moved. "Sarah told me everything before she died. About the embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the people you were working for. She trusted me to protect her family when she couldn't." The guns swung toward her. "And you failed. Just like you failed to notice the brake lines being cut that night." My whole world tilted on its axis. Vivian had known? All this time? "Elena," she said softly, "the combination to the study safe. It's your mother's birthday. The real documents are there, everything she collected. Everything that proves who really killed her. Shut up. The fake agent's voice shook. The FBI is already here, Vivian continued. The real Agent Roberts has everything he needs. It's over. Then I have nothing left to lose. The gun shifted again toward me. Time seemed to slow. I saw Dad lunge forward, heard Vivian scream. The weight on my back disappeared as footsteps thundered up the stairs. A single gunshot cracked through the air. When I looked up, Dad was on the floor, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. The fake agent lay face down, real FBI agents cuffing him as Vivian kicked his gun away. Graham. Her composed mask crumbled as she knelt beside him. Stay with me. I crawled to them, the flash drive still clutched in my hand.
Dad.
His eyes found mine, filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Elena. I should have seen it. Should have protected you both. MS. Carson. The real Agent Roberts appeared in the doorway. We need to get you all out of here. There may be others coming. But I couldn't move. 8 years of hatred toward Vivian, of blaming her for taking Dad away, for erasing Mom's memory. All of it shifted sideways as I watched her press her designer scarf against Dad's wound, her hands trembling. Why? I asked her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because, she whispered, your mother made me promise to wait until you were ready, until you could handle the truth about who really destroyed our family. Sirens wailed outside. The flash drive felt impossibly heavy in my palm. And now? I asked. Now, Vivian said, meeting my eyes, we finish what your mother started. The hospital waiting room felt like a prison cell. Dad was in surgery. The flash drive sat useless in my pocket without a computer, and FBI agents guarded every exit. Vivian paced nearby, her designer heels clicking a nervous rhythm on the linoleum floor. They're moving too slowly, she muttered, checking her phone again. We don't have much time. Time for what? My voice came out harsh. More lies? More secrets?
She stopped pacing.
Elena. 8 years. The words tasted like ash. 8 years of hating you, thinking you took advantage of Dad's grief. And all this time you were what? Mom's secret protector? I was trying to keep you safe. She sank into the chair beside me, her perfect posture finally crumbling. Both of you. Safe from what? Before she could answer, Agent Roberts appeared. MS. Carson, we need to talk about what was in that safe. My head snapped up. You found the documents? The safe was empty. His expression darkened. Completely cleaned out. Vivian went pale. That's impossible. I checked this morning. Someone got there first. He handed her a phone. This security footage was just sent to us. You might want to see who accessed the study an hour before you arrived. The grainy video showed a familiar figure entering the study. Mabel.
No.
I stood up, my legs shaking. My grandmother wouldn't. She's been working with them for years, Vivian said quietly. Since before your mother died. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. You're lying. Why do you think she always knew exactly what was happening with your father's business? How she always had inside information? Vivian's voice cracked. Sarah discovered it just before the accident. That's why she came to me instead of family. My phone buzzed. A message from Mabel. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I did what I had to do to protect our family. Meet me alone at the lake house. No FBI. No Vivian. Just us. Elena. Agent Roberts must have seen something in my face. What is it? I switched off the phone screen. Nothing. Just the hospital updating me about Dad. Vivian's eyes narrowed. She contacted you, didn't she? Before I could respond, a doctor approached. MS. Carson? Your father's asking for you. I found Dad pale and groggy, but alive. His good hand caught mine as I approached the bed. The lake house, he whispered. Don't. Save your strength, I said, but he gripped tighter. Your mother. The night she died. She was going to meet Mabel there. The monitor's steady beeping seemed to grow louder. Why? To confront her. His eyes were clearer now, urgent. She never made it. The break lines. Graham. Vivian appeared in the doorway. You need to rest. But Dad wouldn't let go. Elena, promise me you won't. I have to know the truth, I said, gently extracting my hand. All of it. Outside the room, Vivian caught my arm. Whatever you're thinking, my whole life is a lie. I pulled away. My grandmother, who baked me cookies and held me at Mom's funeral, might be responsible for her death. The stepmother I hated was actually protecting me. And my father. I laughed bitterly. He was too blind to see any of it. Where are you going? To get answers. Elena, wait. But I was already moving past the FBI agents through the hospital doors. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mabel, this time with a photo. Mom's missing documents, spread out on the lake house table. Come alone, the text read. Or these disappear forever. Behind me, I heard Vivian calling Agent Roberts, probably telling him where I was headed. But it didn't matter. 8 years of questions, of misplaced hatred and buried truths, all led to this moment. The lake house had always been our family's safe haven. Now it felt like a trap waiting to spring. But I had to know, was Mabel really capable of betraying us? Of killing her own daughter-in-law? As I started my car, one final text came through. Time to choose, Elena. Family loyalty or the truth. You can't have both. The lake house stood dark against the twilight sky, exactly as I remembered it. Mabel's car sat in the gravel driveway, next to an unfamiliar black SUV. My headlights caught movement behind the curtains as I pulled up. 8 years of Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, and comforting hugs. How many of those moments with Mabel had been lies? The front door opened before I reached it. Elena, sweetheart. Mabel's familiar smile felt wrong now, like a mask that didn't quite fit. Come in quickly. We don't have much time. The documents lay spread across the coffee table, just as in the photo. But something else caught my eye. Mom's old laptop, the one that had supposedly been lost in the move after her death. Looking for this? Mabel held up the flash drive from the violin. I had someone retrieve it from your pocket at the hospital. You really should be more careful with valuable things. My blood ran cold. The nurse who bumped into me. Sit down, Elena.
There's so much you need to understand.
Like how you helped kill my mother? Her smile faltered. Your mother made choices. Dangerous ones. She wouldn't listen to reason. The way Dad wouldn't listen about his investors. The ones who are really running his company. Sometimes protection requires sacrifice. She inserted the flash drive into the laptop. Sarah thought exposing everything would keep you safe. She was wrong. A car door slammed outside. Mabel's expression hardened. I told you to come alone. I did. Then you were followed. She moved to the window, pushing aside the curtain. Vivian, of course. You won't get away with this, I said, edging toward the documents. The FBI are looking in all the wrong places, thanks to some carefully placed evidence. She turned back to me. Did you really think Vivian was protecting you? She works for the same people I do. Always has. You're lying. Am I? She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo. Vivian meeting with the fake Agent Roberts, dated weeks before any of this started. She's been playing both sides, Elena, just like she did with your mother. The front door burst open. Vivian stood there, gun raised. Step away from her, Mabel. Right on cue. Mabel's laugh was cold. Tell her, Vivian. Tell Elena how you really knew Sarah was going to die. Don't listen to her, Vivian said, but her hand shook slightly. She's trying to manipulate you, just like she did with your mother. The truth, I demanded, my voice breaking. For once, someone tell me the truth. I was supposed to stop her, Vivian whispered. That night, I was supposed to intercept Sarah before she reached the lake house. Keep her from exposing everything. But you didn't.
No.
Her eyes filled with tears. I called and warned her instead. Told her to run. But Mabel's people were already waiting. Enough. Mabel moved with surprising speed, grabbing my arm. Something cold pressed against my ribs, a gun. 8 years I've spent protecting this family, making the hard choices neither of you could. By killing your own daughter-in-law? By keeping the business alive, keeping Graham out of prison, giving you a comfortable life. Drop the gun, Mabel. Vivian's voice was steel. Sarah made me promise to protect Elena. I won't fail her again. You already have. The world exploded in sound and movement. I drove my elbow back, just like Mom had taught me in self-defense classes. Mabel's grip loosened. The gun went off, shattering a window. Vivian fired. Mabel stumbled. I lunged for the laptop, grabbing it and the scattered documents. Vivian's hand found my arm, pulling me toward the door. Elena, please, Mabel called out, clutching her bleeding shoulder. Everything I did was for this family. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the woman who had once meant safety and love.
No.
Everything you did was for control. Mom knew that. Now I do too. As we ran to the car, sirens wailed in the distance. The truth about my mother's death, about all of it, was finally in my hands. But as I caught Vivian's haunted expression, I realized we were still missing one piece of the puzzle, and time was running out. Back in Dad's hospital room, I watched the FBI agents leaf through Mom's documents. The laptop had revealed everything: years of money laundering, blackmail, and the elaborate web of lies that had entangled our family. Mabel was in custody, along with several of Dad's board members. She wanted to protect me, Dad said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Your mother. That's why she went to Vivian instead of me. She knew I was too deep in denial to see what my own mother was doing. Vivian stood by the window, her usual perfect posture softened by exhaustion. Sarah knew they would come after her. She made me promise to wait, to watch over both of you until Elena was ready to handle the truth. 8 years, I said, but the bitterness had faded, replaced by something more complex. All this time, I thought you were the villain in our story. In some ways, I was. Vivian turned, meeting my eyes. I could have told you sooner, could have found another way. But fear makes us do terrible things, even with good intentions. A knock at the door made us all turn. Ms. Harper stood there, holding a familiar violin case. The FBI finished processing it, she said, bringing it to me. They said you should have it now. The case felt lighter somehow, its burden of secrets finally lifted. Inside, where the flash drive had been hidden, I noticed something else, a small envelope, yellowed with age, with my name in Mom's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, then you've finally uncovered the truth. Don't let anger consume you the way it almost consumed me. Some people deserve justice, others forgiveness, and the hardest part is knowing the difference. Love always, Mom. Dad reached for my hand. Elena, I know. I squeezed his fingers gently. We all made mistakes. Even Mom. The company, Vivian said softly. Once the investigation is complete, it will need someone to rebuild it. Someone honest. I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not the stepmother who had replaced Mom, but a woman who had carried an impossible burden for 8 years. Will you help me? I asked. Both of you. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Vivian's careful composure cracked into a genuine smile. A commotion in the hallway drew our attention. Through the door's window, I saw Mabel being led away in handcuffs, her elegant facade finally stripped away. Our eyes met briefly. In that moment, I saw not the manipulative mastermind, but my grandmother, the woman who had loved me in her own twisted way, who had justified her crimes as protection. What happens now? Dad asked, watching her disappear down the corridor. Now, I said, carefully placing Mom's violin back in its case, we build something new. Something honest. Ms. Harper touched my shoulder. Your mother would be proud. As if in response, the setting sun broke through the hospital window, casting long shadows across the room. Mom's violin case sat between us, no longer a vessel of secrets, but a reminder of the truth's cost and its worth. Later that night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. There are still people out there. People who won't want the truth exposed. Be careful.
V.
I smiled, thinking of Mom's letter. Some people deserve justice, others forgiveness. And sometimes, The hardest battles aren't fought with weapons or words, but with the quiet courage to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts. The violin case sat in my passenger seat, and in my rearview mirror, I could see Vivian's car following at a discreet distance, still protecting, but now in the open. Dad was healing. Mabel would face justice, and the web of lies that had entangled us for 8 years was finally unraveling. But Mom was right about one thing. The hardest part isn't uncovering the truth. It's knowing what to do with it once you have it. And that journey was just beginning.
I never thought my mother's old art supplies would change everything. But there I was choking on dust in our cramped attic when I found the box that would tear my family apart. My name's Harper, and until that moment, I was just another disappointed daughter trying to live up to impossible expectations. You know the type, straight A's aren't good enough, extracurriculars aren't impressive enough, and God forbid you have dreams of your own. I was supposed to be looking for my sister Claire's old calculus textbooks. Instead, I found myself staring at a battered cardboard box labeled Margaret's Art. Do not throw away in my grandmother's messy handwriting. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, dozens of sketches and paintings lay carefully preserved between sheets of tissue paper. They were incredible portraits capturing raw emotion, landscapes bursting with color, abstract pieces that made my heart ache. And they were all signed by my mother. "What are you doing up there?" Mom's voice floated up from below, making me jump. "Just looking for Claire's books." I called back, quickly gathering some of the artwork. "I'll be down in a minute." "Well, hurry up. Your father will be home soon, and you know how he feels about tardiness at dinner." Did I ever? Dad's rules were carved in stone. Dinner at 6 sharp, phones off the table, and everyone better have something impressive to report about their day. Usually, that meant Claire talking about her latest academic achievement, while I tried to shrink into my chair. I tucked 3 of Mom's paintings into my sweater and carefully replaced the box. My mind was spinning. In 18 years, I'd never seen Mom pick up a paintbrush. She was always just Mom, the one who kept our schedule running like clockwork, who nodded along with Dad's lectures about practical career choices, who gently suggested I focus more on my business classes than my art electives. At dinner that night, I couldn't stop stealing glances at her. Dad was in rare form, practically glowing as he announced Claire's acceptance into some prestigious Master of Business Administration program. "Following in your old man's footsteps," he beamed, raising his glass. "This is what happens when you apply yourself to something worthwhile." I pushed my food around my plate, feeling the weight of Mom's artwork against my ribs where I'd hidden it under my clothes. "Mom, I didn't know you used to paint," I blurted out. The clinking of silverware stopped. Mom's face went pale, and Dad's expression hardened slightly. "That was a long time ago," she said quietly. "But these paintings I found." "Harper." Dad's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Your mother made the right choice to focus on more important things. Just like you need to focus on bringing up that economics grade." I looked at Mom hoping for something. Support? Recognition? But she just smiled that same tight smile she always wore during these conversations and asked Claire about her housing plans for graduate school. Later that night, I spread Mom's paintings across my bed. There was so much life in them, so much passion. What had happened to that version of my mother? And more importantly, was I staring at my own future? My phone buzzed. A text from my grandmother, Evelyn. "Coming to visit next week. Have something important to discuss about your Uncle Nathaniel. Don't tell your father." I glanced at Mom's signature on one of the paintings, then at the acceptance letter from the art school I'd hidden in my desk drawer. Something was shifting in our perfectly ordered world, and I wasn't sure if I was more excited or terrified. One thing was certain, I couldn't let my art die in a box in the attic. Not like Mom did. Even if it meant going to war with my own family. I waited until Dad left for work the next morning before cornering Mom in the kitchen. The paintings I'd found were spread across the counter between us like evidence at a crime scene. She stared at them, hands wrapped around her coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter. "They're beautiful," I said softly. "Why did you stop?" Mom traced a finger along the edge of one painting. A vibrant street scene with people caught mid-motion, their faces full of life. "Sometimes we make choices, Harper. Adult choices." "That's not an answer." "No. She looked up and for a second I saw something fierce in her eyes. What about your choice to hide your art school acceptance letter? I stumbled back, my heart pounding. How did you? I was putting away your laundry last week. She took a sip of coffee, her hand steadier now. Don't worry, your father doesn't know. Before I could respond, Claire walked in, already dressed for her internship interview. She stopped short when she saw the paintings. Holy shit, Mom. These are incredible. Language, Mom said automatically, but there was no force behind it. Claire picked up one of the portraits, a young woman with wild hair and defiant eyes. Is this Grandma Evelyn? Mom nodded. From before she married your grandfather. Back when she was still performing in that folk band of hers. Wait, what? I leaned closer to the painting. Grandma was in a band? There's a lot you don't know about this family, Mom said, and something in her tone made me look up. She was staring at her phone, her face suddenly tight. Speaking of which, your Uncle Nathaniel is coming to dinner tonight. Claire and I exchanged glances. Uncle Nathaniel rarely came to family dinners, and when he did, Dad always ended up in his home office afterward, making angry phone calls about stock prices and market shares. Does Dad know? Claire asked. He will. Mom started gathering up the paintings with quick, efficient movements. Harper, help me put these away before he gets home. But Mom. Now Harper. That evening I sat at our formal dining table, watching Uncle Nathaniel cut into his steak with surgical precision. He'd always reminded me of a shark. All smooth movements and calculated smiles. So Claire, he said, I hear you're following the family tradition. Master of Business Administration at Harrison Business School. Yes, Uncle. Claire's voice was perfect, polite, engaged, everything Dad wanted. But under the table, her leg was bouncing nervously against mine. Excellent choice. Though I suppose Thomas wouldn't have it any other way. Nathaniel's eyes slid to me. And what about you, Harper? Still dabbling in. What was it? Art. Dad's fork scraped against his plate. Harper's focusing on her core subjects now. Aren't you, sweetheart? I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Mom cut in. Actually, Harper's quite talented. She reminds me of myself at that age. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad stared at Mom like she'd started speaking in tongues. Uncle Nathaniel's smile widened slightly. Ah yes, the artist gene. It runs in our side of the family, doesn't it, Margaret? Though some of us learn to put aside childish things. Is that what you did, Nathaniel? Mom's voice was quiet but sharp. Put aside childish things? Like ethics? Business integrity? Margaret. Dad's warning tone filled the room. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from Grandma Evelyn. Don't trust anything your uncle says about the company. Keep your eyes open. I looked up to find Uncle Nathaniel watching me, his expression unreadable. You know, Harper, he said, there are many ways to pursue art. The corporate world can be quite creative. Perhaps you'd like to intern at my company this summer? See how the other side lives. Dad's knuckles went white around his wine glass. Claire kicked me under the table. Thank you, I said carefully, but I have other plans. Do you? Uncle Nathaniel's smile never wavered. Well, plans can change. Just ask your mother. Mom stood up so suddenly her chair nearly fell. I think it's time for dessert. As she fled to the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of her face. She wasn't just angry, she was scared. And suddenly, I understood that my discovery in the attic had uncovered more than just old paintings. It had cracked open something dark and dangerous, something that had been simmering in my family for years. And now I had to choose. Keep digging or bury it all back in the attic where it belonged. Grandma Evelyn arrived like a storm front, sweeping into our house with her usual mix of flowing scarves and unsolicited opinions. I found her in the kitchen that morning, making coffee with Mom and speaking in the kind of hushed tones that always meant trouble. Your brother is planning something, Margaret, Grandma said, not noticing me in the doorway. The board meetings, the private investors, it's all connected. Mom's face went pale. Evelyn, please. Not now. Yes, now. Grandma turned and spotted me. Harper, perfect timing. Come sit with us. I slid into a chair, watching Mom's hands shake as she poured more coffee. Is this about Uncle Nathaniel? It's about everything, Grandma said. Your uncle's been systematically buying up shares in your father's company through shell corporations. He's planning a hostile takeover. Mom! Mom slammed the coffee pot down. She's 18. She doesn't need to be involved in this. She's already involved. We all are. Grandma pulled out her phone, showing us a series of emails. Nathaniel's been using information from your old art circle, Margaret. Those gallery owners you used to know? He's been gathering dirt on Thomas through them for years. My stomach lurched. What kind of dirt? The kind that could destroy your father's reputation. And your mother's. Before anyone could explain further, Claire burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. Harper, I just got the most amazing news. I was talking to my academic advisor about your portfolio, and she thinks. She stopped short, finally reading the room. Mom's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. What portfolio? Mom asked. Claire's eyes went wide. Oh God, Harper, I'm so sorry. I thought they knew about the art school acceptance. The silence that followed was like a vacuum, sucking all the air from the room. Then Dad's voice came from behind me, quiet and deadly. What art school acceptance? I turned slowly. He stood in the doorway, still in his running clothes from his morning jog. His face was unreadable. Thomas, Mom started, but he held up a hand. Harper. Explain. My voice came out surprisingly steady. I applied to the Rhode Island School of Design. I got in. Full scholarship. I see. He stepped into the kitchen, his running shoes squeaking against the tile. And when were you planning to tell me that you've been wasting time on applications instead of focusing on your economics grade? Thomas, Grandma cut in. This isn't the time. Stay out of this, Evelyn. This is between me and my daughter. He turned back to me. Well, something snapped inside me. Maybe it was the emails on Grandma's phone or Mom's trembling hands, or the way Claire looked like she wanted to disappear. I wasn't going to tell you, I said, because you never listen. You didn't listen when Mom wanted to keep painting, and you're not listening now when your own brother-in-law is trying to destroy you. Dad's face went from red to white. What are you talking about? Nathaniel, Grandma said, standing up. He's making his move, Thomas, and he's using Margaret's past to do it. Dad looked at Mom. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. Margaret. I'm sorry, Mom whispered. The people I used to know from my art days, I never thought Nathaniel would. Would what? Dad's voice was dangerous now. Would use your old connections to spy on me? Would manipulate my family? Would try to take everything I've built. Everything you've built? I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. What about what Mom gave up? What about what you're making Claire give up? What about? Enough. Dad slammed his hand on the counter. You will withdraw your art school acceptance immediately. I won't have another dreamer in this family throwing away their future on pretty pictures. Thomas. Mom's voice cracked like a whip. We all turned to stare at her. She was standing now too, her hands steady for the first time all morning. That's enough. But it was too late. I was already moving, grabbing my keys and phone. Claire called after me, but I didn't stop. I could hear Dad and Grandma arguing, Mom's voice rising above them both, but it all faded as I ran to my car. I had one last glimpse of them through the kitchen window, my perfect broken family, finally showing its true colors. Then I turned the key in the ignition and drove away, leaving everything I thought I knew behind me. I ended up at the old art supply store downtown, the one place I could always think clearly. The bell chimed as I pushed through the door, and the familiar smell of paint and canvas wrapped around me like a blanket. My phone buzzed again, the 20th call from Claire in the last hour, but I ignored it. You look like you've seen a ghost, said Marcus, the elderly owner who'd been supplying me with contraband art supplies for years. He was arranging brushes in the front display, his arthritis-curved fingers moving with surprising grace. Just family stuff, I muttered, heading for my usual spot in the sketch corner. Family stuff that has Thomas Winslow's daughter hiding in my shop at 10 in the morning? Before I could answer, the bell chimed again. Uncle Nathaniel walked in, looking completely out of place in his tailored suit. Harper, he said smoothly, your father's worried sick. I'm sure he is. I gripped my sketchbook tighter. How did you find me? Claire mentioned this was your sanctuary. He picked up a charcoal pencil, turning it in his hands. You know, your mother used to come here too. Before she married your father. Marcus shuffled closer, his usual friendly demeanor replaced by something harder. Can I help you find something, sir? No need. Uncle Nathaniel set down the pencil. I'm here to help my niece understand her options. I understand my options just fine, I said, but my voice shook. Do you? He pulled out his phone, showing me a series of documents. Your father's company is built on sand, Harper. One push and it all comes down. Unless what? Unless someone convinces the board that new leadership is needed. Someone young, someone with artistic sensibilities. Someone who could bridge the gap between business and culture. I stared at him. You want me to help you take over Dad's company? I want to give you everything you've ever wanted. Art school, galleries, complete creative freedom. All you have to do is tell the board about your father's questionable business practices. What questionable practices? His smile turned sharp. The ones we'll create evidence for. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Grandma Evelyn. Don't trust him. Coming to get you. Stay put. Think about it, Uncle Nathaniel continued. Your father would rather destroy your dreams than support them. Why protect him? Marcus cleared his throat. I think you should leave, sir. Of course. Uncle Nathaniel straightened his tie. But Harper, remember, your father gave your mother the same choice once. Art or family. Look how that turned out. After he left, I sat there shaking until Grandma arrived. She took one look at me and pulled me into a fierce hug. He offered you a deal, didn't he? I nodded against her shoulder. How did you know? Because he made the same offer to your mother 20 years ago. That's why she stopped painting. Grandma pulled back, her eyes fierce. He threatened to expose some of Thomas's early business dealings if she didn't give up her art career. She chose to protect your father, and Nathaniel's been bitter about it ever since. But why? Why does he care so much about destroying Dad? Because your father chose Margaret over him. They were business partners first before Thomas met your mother. Nathaniel never forgave either of them for falling in love. My phone lit up with a text from Claire. Dad's drinking. Mom's crying. Please come home. I can't go back, I whispered. Not after everything that's happened. Grandma squeezed my hand. Then don't. Come stay with me. We'll figure this out together. But Dad, your father needs to learn that control isn't love. She picked up my sketchbook. And you need to learn that choosing yourself isn't betrayal. I looked around the art store, at the supplies that had been my refuge for so long. Uncle Nathaniel's offer hung in the air like smoke, tempting and toxic. I could destroy my father's company, get everything I wanted, and make him feel as helpless as he'd made me feel. Or I could find another way. Okay, I said finally. I'll come with you. But first I need to make a stop. Where? I picked up my phone, typing out a message to Claire. Meet me at Mom's old gallery. Bring her paintings. All of them. It's time to fight back. The old gallery looked exactly like Mom's paintings, faded glory wrapped in dust and regret. Claire was already waiting outside, clutching the box of artwork to her chest like a shield. Dad's furious, she said as I approached. He's talking about cutting you off completely. Let him. I pulled out the gallery keys Grandma had given me. Did anyone follow you? No, but Uncle Nathaniel called. He knows what we're doing. The lock clicked open, releasing a wave of musty air. Inside, empty walls stretched into shadows, picture hooks waiting like tiny accusations. I flipped on the lights, revealing the ghost of what used to be Mom's artistic home. Help me hang these, I said, pulling out the first painting. Claire hesitated. Harper, maybe we should think about this. Uncle Nathaniel said. Uncle Nathaniel is trying to destroy our family. Is he? Claire set down the box. Or is Dad doing that all by himself? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Where are you? Your father's meeting with the board tomorrow. Nathaniel's making his move. Perfect timing, I muttered, starting to hang the paintings. What are you planning? Claire asked, finally helping me. A wake-up call. Dad needs to see what his precious control has cost this family. I stepped back, studying the arrangement. Did you bring the photos? Claire pulled out an envelope. Inside were pictures of Mom from her gallery days, young, vibrant, surrounded by admirers at her shows. The same fire I'd seen in her paintings burned in her eyes. She was amazing, Claire whispered. She still is. She just forgot. The gallery door chimed. We both spun around to find Uncle Nathaniel standing there, looking pleased. Now this is interesting, he said, walking in slowly. A tribute to Margaret's lost dreams? How poetic. Get out, I snapped. I'm trying to help you, Harper. Both of you. He turned to Claire. Did you know your father's company is built on stolen ideas? Ideas he took from me while dating your mother. Claire's face went pale. That's not true. No. He pulled out his phone. I have proof. Documents, emails, witnesses. Tomorrow it all comes out at the board meeting. Unless what? I demanded. Unless you both help me take control. Claire's business acumen, your artistic vision, we could rebuild something better. Something honest. There's nothing honest about blackmail. Grandma's voice cut through the gallery. She stood in the doorway, looking fiercer than her age should allow. Hello, Mother, Uncle Nathaniel said coldly. Still fighting other people's battles? Still trying to own what isn't yours? She walked in, standing between us. You never could accept that Margaret chose Thomas over you. Claire gasped softly beside me. The pieces suddenly clicked. Uncle Nathaniel's bitterness, his obsession with destroying Dad's company, the way he always watched Mom at family gatherings. You were in love with her, I said. His smile turned ugly. I was her partner. In art, in business, in everything. Then your father swept in with his big plans and corporate dreams. And Mom chose him, Claire finished. She chose wrong. He gestured at the paintings. Look at what she gave up. Look at what your father took from her. My phone buzzed again, Dad, this time. Come home, please. We need to talk. I looked at the paintings on the wall, at Mom's captured dreams and lost possibilities. Then at Claire, who seemed torn between her Master of Business Administration future and this new understanding of our family's past. At Grandma, standing strong against her own son's bitterness. At Uncle Nathaniel, whose revenge had poisoned 2 decades of family history. You're right, I said finally. Mom gave up too much. But that's not Dad's fault. It's yours. Excuse me. You made her choose. Art or family. Just like you're making us choose now. I picked up my phone. But we're not, Mom. And I'm done letting men decide what I can create. I hit dial on Dad's number, watching Uncle Nathaniel's face darken. What are you doing? Fighting back, I said as the phone rang. But not your way. Claire stepped up beside me, her hand finding mine. Together, we watched our uncle realize he'd just lost his last chance at revenge. And somehow, standing in Mom's old gallery surrounded by her art, that felt like the first real victory we'd had in years. The board meeting looked like a funeral, and maybe it was. I stood at the back of the conference room, watching Dad face the people who could destroy everything he'd built. Mom sat rigid beside him, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. Claire squeezed my arm as Uncle Nathaniel took the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. I've called this emergency meeting to discuss some disturbing information about Thomas Winslow's business practices. Dad's face remained stone still, but I saw his finger tap against the table. His one tell when he was scared. The board members leaned forward, vultures scenting blood. Before you continue, Nathaniel, I stepped forward, my heart hammering. I have something to show everyone. Uncle Nathaniel's smile flickered. This is hardly the time for amateur art presentations, Harper. But I was already connecting my laptop to the projector. The first image filled the screen, Mom's painting of Dad from 20 years ago, young and determined in his first office. Then another. Dad helping Mom set up her gallery opening. Another, both of them reviewing business plans at our kitchen table. My mother documented everything, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Every meeting, every idea, every collaboration. She didn't just give up art for the company. She used it to tell the truth. The board members murmured, studying the images. Uncle Nathaniel's face darkened. These prove nothing, he snapped. Actually, Claire stood, pulling out a USB drive. They prove everything. I've spent the last week going through Mom's old gallery records. The dates, the meetings, the witnesses. They all matched Dad's version of events, not yours. Uncle Nathaniel lunged for the drive, but Grandma was faster. She snatched it and handed it to the board chairman. My son, she said clearly, has been lying to you all for 20 years. The room erupted in chaos. Security appeared to escort Uncle Nathaniel out as he shouted threats and accusations. The board members huddled over laptops, reviewing evidence. Through it all, Dad sat motionless, staring at Mom's paintings on the screen. I thought we'd won. I really did. Then Uncle Nathaniel broke free from security. You want truth? He snarled, pulling out his phone. Here's truth. He pressed play on a video. Mom in her old gallery, young and passionate, telling someone off camera that she was choosing art over business, that she couldn't marry Thomas Winslow, that she wouldn't give up her dreams. The date stamp showed it was filmed the day before their wedding. The room went silent. Dad turned to Mom, his face unreadable. Margaret. It was a moment of doubt, she whispered. Just a moment. Nathaniel filmed it without my knowledge. You told me you chose us. That you wanted this life. I did choose you. I choose you every day. Uncle Nathaniel's laugh was ugly. She chose safety, security, just like Harper's choosing now, pretending her little art dreams don't matter more than family loyalty. That's not. I started, but Dad cut me off. All these years, he said quietly, I thought I was protecting you, both of you, from struggling, from failing. But I was just afraid. Afraid you'd realize you made the wrong choice, Margaret. Afraid you'd leave Harper. Afraid I'd lose everything I loved, because I couldn't understand what really mattered. He stood up, straightening his tie. The board can review all the evidence. They'll find that every business decision was legal and documented. But they'll also find that I failed at something more important, seeing the art in the people I love. Uncle Nathaniel sneered. How touching. But sentiment doesn't change facts. Your company, my company, Dad interrupted, is built on partnership. With Margaret, with my daughters, even with you once. I forgot that somewhere along the way. He turned to me. Harper, I'm sorry. For everything. But especially for not seeing that your art isn't a betrayal of our family. It's the heart of it. For a moment hope flared. Then Uncle Nathaniel played his final card. Too late for apologies, Thomas. The press already has everything, the video, the accusations, the family drama. By morning, your reputation will be destroyed. Your precious legacy? Gone. And this time, no amount of pretty pictures can save you. He was right. I could see it in Dad's face, in Mom's tears, in Claire's desperate grip on my arm. We'd won the battle but lost the war. Our family's name, Dad's company, Mom's sacrifice. It would all be tabloid fodder by sunrise. Unless I found a way to turn art into armor one last time. I found Uncle Nathaniel in Mom's old gallery, exactly where I knew he'd be. He stood surrounded by her paintings, phone in hand, probably crafting the press release that would destroy our family. You really think art is weakness, don't you? I said, making him jump. Harper. He recovered quickly, smiling that shark smile. Come to beg for mercy? No. I walked to the center of the gallery, where I'd set up my easel earlier. I came to paint. He laughed. Now? Your family's about to lose everything, and you want to doodle. I picked up my brush. Mom didn't choose Dad over art. She chose to tell stories a different way. Through documents, through records, through truth. That's what these paintings really show. Truth. He spat the word. The truth is your father stole everything from me. My ideas, my partner, your sister. I started sketching quick angry strokes. Mom wasn't your property. Neither was the company. Neither am I. His phone buzzed. Too late anyway. The press release goes live in 10 minutes. By morning, everyone will know about Thomas Winslow's fraudulent empire and his family's desperate cover-up. They'll know something better. Claire's voice came from the doorway. She stood with her laptop open, live streaming everything. They'll know how far a bitter man will go to destroy what he couldn't control. Uncle Nathaniel lunged for her, but Mom stepped in front of her, holding up her old camera. I recorded everything, Nathaniel. Every threat. Every manipulation. Every lie you told about Thomas. Her voice shook, but her hands were steady. I never stopped being an artist. I just learned to capture different kinds of truth. No one will believe you, he snarled, but his eyes darted between the cameras and my canvas. They'll believe this. I turned my easel around. The painting was rough but powerful. Uncle Nathaniel standing among Mom's art, his phone raised like a weapon, surrounded by the ghosts of his own choices. In the background, barely visible, was a younger version of him watching Mom and Dad fall in love. You think a painting will save you? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. No, Dad said, stepping into the gallery. The truth will save us. All of it. Even the parts that hurt. He walked to Mom's old wedding portrait, the one she'd painted the day after Uncle Nathaniel filmed her moment of doubt. I was scared too, Dad said quietly. Scared I wasn't good enough for her. Scared she'd regret choosing me over art. But I was wrong, she never chose one over the other. She found a way to be both. Just like Harper has. How touching, Uncle Nathaniel sneered, raising his phone. But in 1 minute, none of this will matter. Actually, Claire turned her laptop around, showing the company's website. It already does. Our live stream has gone viral. Your emails are public. Your fake evidence is exposed. And Harper's painting? It's trending. Uncle Nathaniel's phone clattered to the floor. He stared at the growing view count, at the comments flooding in, at his carefully constructed revenge crumbling in real time. You can't, he whispered. I won't let you. Let go, Nathaniel, Grandma said from the doorway. Before you lose the only thing you have left, your family. He looked around the gallery, at Mom's art telling our family's story, at Claire's technology spreading the truth, at my painting capturing his pain and betrayal. 20 years of bitterness reflected back at him from every angle. His shoulders sagged. I loved her, he said finally, looking at Mom. Both of them. The company. The dream. Everything. I know, Mom said softly. But love isn't ownership. It's creation. She picked up a brush and handed it to him. For a moment he stood frozen. Then slowly he set down his phone and took the brush. The press release? Claire asked. Delete it, he said quietly. All of it. As Claire's fingers flew over her keyboard, I added the final stroke to my painting. A small light breaking through the darkness around Uncle Nathaniel's figure. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Sometimes the greatest art comes from the deepest wounds, and sometimes healing starts with a single brush stroke. 6 months later, I stood in the transformed gallery space, watching Dad adjust Mom's newest painting on the wall. The place had changed. No more dust, no more ghosts. Now it was filled with light and life, a perfect blend of Mom's classic pieces and my contemporary work. A little to the left, Claire called from her desk, not looking up from her laptop. She'd turned the gallery's back office into her startup headquarters, claiming she could manage both her Master of Business Administration and a digital art platform. Somehow she was making it work. Perfect, Mom said, stepping back to admire the hanging. She had paint on her cheek, just like when I was little. These days she usually did. The door chimed and Uncle Nathaniel walked in. He looked different, less sharp edges, more human. The court-mandated therapy was probably helping. The renovation looks good, he said quietly, hands in his pockets. Dad tensed slightly but nodded. They weren't friends, probably never would be. But they'd found a way to coexist, mostly through Mom's persistence and Grandma's stern supervision. Harper's piece is the centerpiece, Mom told him, pointing to my latest work, a massive canvas showing our family through different lenses, business meetings morphing into art galleries, spreadsheets flowing into paint strokes, all of us connected by lines of light and shadow. It's honest, Uncle Nathaniel said, studying it. That's important. Speaking of honest, Claire piped up. Your company's new art initiative is trending. People love the idea of combining tech and traditional art. He almost smiled. Turns out there's more than one way to build something worthwhile. The gallery door chimed again. A group of art students filed in, my classmates from RISD, here for our collaborative show. Dad watched them set up their pieces, his expression thoughtful. You were right, he said suddenly, turning to me. About everything. Art isn't just pretty pictures. Truth. Connection. Even business. Does this mean you're finally letting me paint your office mural? He laughed, A real laugh, not the tight business chuckle I grew up with. One step at a time. Mom slipped her hand into his, leaving a smudge of paint on his expensive suit. He didn't seem to mind. Grandma appeared with her signature terrible timing, carrying a dusty box. Look what I found in my attic. Inside were Dad's old sketches, rough drawings of product designs, company logos, dreams scribbled in margins. Art in its own way. I was afraid, he admitted, touching one of the sketches. Afraid of anything that couldn't be controlled or measured. Afraid of ending up like. He glanced at Uncle Nathaniel, who was helping a student adjust their lighting. Fear makes us forget who we are, Mom said softly. But art helps us remember. Claire closed her laptop. Speaking of remembering, Harper's acceptance letter came. My heart stopped. The graduate program in Paris, the one combining business and fine arts, the one I'd applied to without telling anyone. Dad picked up the envelope. For a moment I saw the old him surface, the one who demanded perfect grades and practical choices. Then he handed it to me. Whatever it says, he said, we're proud of you. I opened it slowly, feeling the weight of everything that had brought us here. Mom's hidden paintings, Claire's secret support, Grandma's fierce love, even Uncle Nathaniel's bitter lessons about the price of control. I got in. The gallery erupted in congratulations, but I watched Dad's face. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. Paris, he said. Your mother always wanted to paint there. Mom squeezed his hand. Maybe I still will. I looked around the gallery, at my family finding new ways to blend art and business, truth and dreams, past and future. At Uncle Nathaniel, slowly learning to create instead of control. At Claire, building bridges between different worlds. The light through the windows caught my latest painting, highlighting the connections between us all. Some were strong, some still healing, some permanently changed. But together they made something beautiful. Something true. Something worth fighting for.
It was a typical Tuesday morning when my world tilted on its axis. I was sipping my lukewarm coffee, trying to muster the energy to tackle the endless spreadsheets waiting for me at work, when my laptop pinged with a new email. The subject line read, "For your eyes only." It was the kind of message that made your stomach drop before you even opened it. My name is Harper, and I'm an urban planner with a knack for finding the beauty in chaos. I've spent years designing spaces that bring people together, but nothing could prepare me for the mess I was about to dive into. I've been engaged to Ethan for a year, and while most of our relationship has been a dream, his family has always been a thorn in our side. Especially Vanessa, his sister, whose presence is as overwhelming as her social media following. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the email. It was anonymous, filled with screenshots of financial transactions that didn't make sense. Money was being siphoned from Ethan's accounts, and the name attached to these transactions was none other than Vanessa Calloway. My heart raced as I scrolled through the evidence. It felt like a scene from a bad thriller, but this was my life. I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind a whirlpool of confusion and disbelief. Was this real? Could Vanessa really be stealing from her brother? And why would someone send this to me? The questions buzzed around my head like angry bees. As I closed the laptop, I felt a chill run down my spine. There was no denying it. Something was seriously wrong. Ethan walked into the room, his hair still damp from his morning shower. "Hey, you ready for work?" he asked, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Yeah, just finishing up some last-minute stuff," I replied, forcing a smile. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. I wanted to tell him, to lay everything out and demand answers, but a part of me hesitated. What if there was more to this than just Vanessa's greed? What if I was missing a piece of the puzzle? Ethan leaned over and kissed my forehead, his touch warm and reassuring. "You okay? You look a bit distracted." "Just thinking about work," I lied, my stomach twisting with guilt. I hated keeping things from him, but I needed time to think, to figure out the best way to protect him without causing unnecessary pain. As I watched him leave for the office, I felt a pang of regret. I knew I couldn't sit on this information forever. But for now, I needed to gather more evidence to understand the full picture before confronting him. I took a deep breath and decided to do some digging of my own. Throughout the day, I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to that email. I replayed every interaction I'd had with Vanessa, searching for signs I might have missed. She was always so charming, so effortlessly confident. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe her charisma was just a mask, hiding something darker underneath. I spent my lunch break scrolling through Vanessa's social media, looking for anything that could hint at financial trouble or desperation. But all I saw were perfectly curated images of exotic vacations, designer clothes, and glamorous parties. It was a life that seemed far removed from any financial woes. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, both physically and mentally. Ethan was already there, cooking dinner, the smell of garlic and herbs filling the air. He looked up as I entered, a smile lighting up his face. "Hey, how was your day?" "It was interesting," I replied, trying to sound casual. But inside, I was a bundle of nerves, wound tight and ready to snap. As we sat down to eat, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. But how do you tell the person you love that their own sister might be betraying them? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. And then, just as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed with another email notification. I glanced at the screen, my heart skipping a beat as I read the subject line, "You're not safe." The words sent a shiver down my spine, and I knew this was just the beginning. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than I'd imagined, and I was right in the middle of it. The Calloway family dinners were always a test of endurance. Margaret's dining room was a shrine to tradition, with its heavy drapes and antique china, a stark contrast to the tension simmering beneath the surface. As Ethan and I stepped inside, I could feel the weight of expectations settling over me like a too-tight sweater. Margaret greeted us with a polite smile, her eyes scanning me with the precision of a seasoned banker assessing a risky investment. "Harper, dear, so lovely to see you," she said, her voice smooth but lacking warmth. "Thank you, Margaret." "It's nice to be here," I replied, matching her tone. Ethan squeezed my hand, a silent pledge of solidarity amidst the storm. Vanessa was already at the table, scrolling through her phone with the practiced indifference of someone who knew the world was watching her every move. She looked up, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, Harper. Loving the outfit. Very urban chic." I nodded, trying not to roll my eyes. "Thanks, Vanessa. You look great too," I replied, my words as hollow as hers. Dinner commenced with the usual small talk, the kind that danced around the real issues without ever addressing them. Margaret asked Ethan about work, her questions pointed and probing, while Vanessa interjected with stories of her latest influencer escapades. Ethan played along, his laughter a little too forced, his eyes darting to me every so often as if checking to make sure I was still there. As the evening wore on, Margaret turned her attention to me. "So, Harper, how's the planning world treating you? Still building those inclusive communities?" I nodded, keeping my smile fixed. "Yes, it's going well. We've just started a new project downtown. It's exciting to see how we can transform spaces to bring people together." "Interesting," Margaret replied, her tone suggesting otherwise. "I suppose it's quite a challenge, trying to make everyone happy." "It is," I agreed. "But it's worth it when you see the impact it can have." Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Speaking of challenges, Harper, I heard you've been quite busy lately. Anything new on your plate?" Her words were innocent enough, but there was an edge to them, a subtle jab that made my skin prickle. I met her gaze, refusing to flinch. Just the usual work stuff. Nothing too exciting. Ethan shifted in his seat, sensing the undercurrent, but unsure how to navigate it. "Vanessa, have you thought about collaborating with Harper on one of her projects? Your influence could really bring attention to the cause." Vanessa laughed, a tinkling sound that felt rehearsed. "Oh, Ethan, I don't think Harper needs my help. She's doing just fine on her own." Margaret's eyes flicked between us, her expression unreadable. "Well, I'm sure Harper appreciates the offer," she said, her voice like velvet over steel. I forced another smile, my patience wearing thin. Of course, collaboration is always welcome. As dessert was served, I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe. The email from earlier still weighed heavily on my mind, and the dinner had only added to the pressure. I splashed some cold water on my face, trying to clear my thoughts. When I returned, I caught the tail end of a conversation between Ethan and his parents. Robert, usually the silent observer, was speaking with unusual fervor. Ethan, we only want what's best for you. Family is important. Ethan nodded, his jaw set. I know, Dad, but Harper is my family too. The room went quiet, the air thick with unspoken words. Vanessa's eyes flicked to me, something like surprise crossing her features before she masked it with a smile. Well, family dinners are always interesting, aren't they? I took my seat, feeling the tension coil tighter. The night ended with polite goodbyes and promises to do this again soon, though I doubted anyone truly meant it. As we drove home, Ethan was unusually quiet, his fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the steering wheel. Harper, I'm sorry about tonight. They can be intense. I reached over, placing my hand over his. It's okay. I know they mean well in their own way. He sighed, glancing at me with a mixture of gratitude and frustration. I just wish they could see how amazing you are. How much you mean to me. I smiled, touched by his words. But the unease lingered, a shadow that refused to be dispelled. And as we pulled into our driveway, I knew that the family dinner had only scratched the surface of the turmoil to come. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination simmering beneath my skin. Last night's dinner had only confirmed what I already knew. Something had to give. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine while Vanessa was potentially stealing from Ethan. The email evidence was a ticking time bomb, and it was time to defuse it. After Ethan left for work, I sat at the kitchen table, the email open on my laptop. My heart pounded as I reread the transactions, each one a betrayal that cut deeper than the last. I knew I had to tell Ethan, no matter how much it hurt. When he returned home that evening, I was ready. We settled on the couch, and I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. Ethan, there's something we need to talk about. I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. He looked at me, concern etched on his face. What's going on, Harper? I handed him the laptop, the email displayed in stark black and white. I got this a couple of days ago. It's about Vanessa. Ethan's eyes scanned the screen, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. This can't be right, he said, his voice tight with shock. I know it's hard to believe, I replied gently, but we need to figure out what's going on. I didn't want to keep it from you, but I had to be sure. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and disbelief. Why would she do this? Vanessa's always been difficult, but this. I don't know, I said, my heart aching for him. But we need to confront her. We can't just let this slide. Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. You're right. We need answers. The next day, Ethan arranged to meet Vanessa at a cafe downtown. I insisted on coming along, needing to see the confrontation through. As we walked in, Vanessa was already there, sipping a latte with the practiced grace of someone who knew they were being watched. Hey, you two, she greeted us, her smile bright but brittle. Ethan didn't waste time. Vanessa, we need to talk about something serious. Her smile faltered, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Okay, what's this about? He placed the laptop on the table, the email open for her to see. Can you explain this? Vanessa's eyes widened as she took in the information, her expression shifting from surprise to indignation. This is ridiculous. You think I'd steal from you, Ethan? Then how do you explain these transactions? Ethan pressed, his voice a mixture of anger and hurt. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might confess. But then her gaze hardened. I don't know what this is, but it's not me. Someone's trying to set me up. Ethan's jaw clenched, his frustration palpable. Vanessa, we need the truth. Her eyes flashed with defiance. I swear, Ethan, I didn't do this. You have to believe me. The tension hung heavy between us, an invisible barrier that seemed impossible to cross. I glanced at Ethan, seeing the conflict etched in his features. He wanted to believe her, but the evidence was damning. Just as I thought the conversation was reaching a dead end, Vanessa let slip, "You really think Mom would let something like this happen?" Ethan froze, his eyes narrowing. What does Mom have to do with this? Vanessa's expression shifted, a flicker of panic crossing her face. Nothing, I just mean she's always watching out for us. But the damage was done. Ethan's suspicion was piqued, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. There was more to this than just Vanessa's actions, and now it seemed Margaret might be involved too. As we left the cafe, Ethan was silent, his thoughts a storm of confusion and betrayal. I reached for his hand, offering what comfort I could. "We'll figure this out, Ethan. Together." He nodded, his grip tightening on mine. I just never thought it would come to this. My own family. I understood his pain, the sense of betrayal cutting deeper than any physical wound. But I also knew that uncovering the truth was the only way forward. As we walked back to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. And whatever secrets lay buried in the Calloway family, we would face them together. The days following our confrontation with Vanessa were tense, like living in a pressure cooker with the heat slowly rising. Ethan and I were navigating a minefield, and every step felt precarious. We knew we had to address the elephant in the room, Margaret's possible involvement, but the question was how. One evening, Ethan came home with a determined look in his eyes. "We need to talk to my parents," he said, his voice firm but weary. "Are you sure?" I asked, my own doubts gnawing at me. What if it makes things worse? He shook his head, resolute. "We can't keep avoiding it. If there's something more going on, we need to know." I nodded, understanding the necessity, even as my stomach twisted with anxiety. We agreed to visit them the next day, hoping for clarity but bracing for the fallout. The Calloway residence was as imposing as ever, its grandeur overshadowed by the tension that seemed to seep from its walls. Margaret greeted us with her usual poise, but there was an edge to her demeanor, as if she sensed the storm brewing. "To what do we owe this surprise visit?" she asked, her tone light but her eyes watchful. Ethan didn't waste time. "We need to talk about Vanessa and the money." Margaret's smile faltered, a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossing her face. "What about it?" Ethan took a deep breath, his grip on my hand reassuring. "We have evidence that Vanessa might have been siphoning money from my accounts. And she mentioned something about you when we confronted her." Margaret's expression hardened, her gaze shifting to me as if searching for weakness. "And you believe her? You think I'm involved in some scheme against my own son?" The accusation hung heavy in the air, and I could feel Ethan's struggle, caught between loyalty to his family and the truth staring him in the face. "We just want to understand what's going on," he said, his voice a mix of frustration and pleading. Robert, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this calmly." Margaret shot him a look, but he held her gaze, a silent communication passing between them. Reluctantly, she nodded, and we moved to the living room, the atmosphere tense and charged. As we settled into our seats, I noticed Margaret's fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the armrest, a small crack in her otherwise composed facade. "Vanessa has always been impulsive, but I assure you I have no knowledge of any financial misdeeds," she said, her voice steady but lacking conviction. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "Then why did she mention you? What aren't you telling us?" Margaret hesitated, a rare moment of vulnerability crossing her features before she masked it with resolve. "There are things you don't understand, Ethan. Family matters that are best left in the past." Her words were cryptic, a veil over whatever secrets lay beneath. But before Ethan could press further, Vanessa walked in, her expression a mixture of defiance and desperation. "I didn't do it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I swear I didn't." Ethan turned to her, his frustration evident. "Then why all the secrecy? Why drag Mom into this?" Vanessa's eyes flicked to Margaret, a silent plea for help. But Margaret remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken truths, until Robert spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "Perhaps it's time we all stopped dancing around the issue. If there's something going on, it's better to address it now." Margaret's gaze softened, a rare glimpse of the woman behind the armor. "It's complicated, Ethan. There are things I've done to protect this family, to keep us together." Her admission hung in the air, a crack in the foundation that threatened to widen. I could see Ethan's resolve wavering, torn between anger and a desire to understand. I placed a hand on his arm, grounding him in the moment. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Together. The room was silent, the weight of the truth pressing down on us all. And in that moment, I realized that this was about more than just money or betrayal. It was about a family grappling with its own demons and the lengths they would go to protect their own. As we left the house, I felt a shift in the air, a sense of inevitability that left me both anxious and strangely hopeful. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like we were moving towards something real, something honest. And whatever lay ahead, I knew we would face it together. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. I lay awake, the weight of everything pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. The confrontation with Margaret had left more questions than answers. And the family's silence was a deafening reminder of the secrets that still lay hidden. Ethan was already up, pacing the kitchen with a cup of coffee in hand. His eyes were shadowed with fatigue, the strain of the past few days evident in every line of his face. "We need to do something," he said, breaking the silence. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what that something was. "Maybe we should talk to my dad," I suggested, thinking of Gregory's steady wisdom. "He might have some insight on how to handle this." Ethan agreed, and later that day, we found ourselves at my father's house. Gregory greeted us with his usual warmth, his presence a balm against the chaos. Over tea, we laid out the situation, from the financial discrepancies to the cryptic hints of family secrets. Gregory listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "It sounds like there's a lot more going on beneath the surface," he said, his voice calm and measured. "You need to approach this with care, but also with honesty. Secrets have a way of festering if left unchecked." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just don't know how to get through to them. It's like they're all hiding something, and I'm stuck in the middle." Gregory nodded, a sympathetic smile on his lips. "Sometimes, the best way to deal with secrets is to bring them into the light. Confront them head-on, but be prepared for what you might find." As we left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, though the path ahead was still uncertain. We needed to confront the family to demand the truth, but it was a daunting prospect. Back at home, Ethan and I discussed our next steps, our conversation punctuated by tense silences. "We should get everyone together," Ethan suggested. "Lay everything out and see what happens." I hesitated, the thought of another confrontation filling me with dread. But Gregory's words echoed in my mind, urging me to face the truth. "Okay," I agreed. "But we need to be prepared for whatever comes out." The following weekend, we gathered the Calloway family at Ethan's parents' house. The air was thick with unspoken tension, everyone on edge as we settled into the living room. Ethan took a deep breath, his resolve unwavering. "We need to talk about what's been happening. About the money and whatever else is going on." Margaret's eyes narrowed, her defenses rising. "I told you, I don't know anything about this." Vanessa, seated beside her, looked equally defiant. "And I already said I didn't do it." Ethan's frustration boiled over, his voice rising. "Then why all the secrecy? Why can't we just be honest with each other?" The room fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on us all. It was Robert who finally broke the silence, his voice steady but grave. "There are things that have been kept from you, Ethan. Things that we thought were best left in the past." Ethan turned to him, confusion and hurt in his eyes. "What are you talking about, Dad?" Robert exchanged a glance with Margaret, a silent conversation passing between them. "Your mother and I have been dealing with some financial issues. We didn't want to burden you with it." Margaret's expression softened, a rare vulnerability showing through. "We thought we could handle it ourselves, but things got out of hand." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, her bravado crumbling. "I tried to help, but it just made things worse." The revelation hung in the air, a tangled web of deceit and good intentions gone awry. Ethan's shoulders slumped, the weight of it all crashing down on him. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have worked through this together." Margaret's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her voice barely a whisper. "We didn't want to worry you. You have your own life, your own future to think about." Ethan looked at me, searching for support, and I nodded, my heart aching for him. "We're in this together," I said softly. "We'll figure it out." As the family began to talk, the tension slowly eased, replaced by a tentative hope. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time, it felt like we were moving in the right direction. And as we left the Calloway house that evening, I realized that justice wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about understanding, about finding a way to heal the wounds that had been hidden for too long. And with that understanding came a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to build a future free from the shadows of the past. The Calloway family meeting had left me emotionally drained, and as Ethan and I drove home, a heavy silence settled between us. The revelations about the financial troubles were just the tip of the iceberg, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on us both. It was as if we were standing on the edge of a precipice, and one wrong move could send everything crashing down. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white with tension. "I can't believe they kept this from me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "All these years, and I never knew." I reached over, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "They thought they were protecting you," I offered, though the words felt hollow even to my ears. He shook his head, frustration etched into every line of his face. "But at what cost? We're supposed to be a family, Harper. Families don't keep secrets like this." I nodded, understanding his pain all too well. The Calloways were a family bound by secrets, and now those secrets were threatening to tear them apart. But as much as I wanted to help, I felt like an outsider looking in, powerless to stop the unraveling. Back at our apartment, Ethan paced the living room, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "What are we supposed to do now?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "Maybe we need to give them time. Let them sort through their own issues." He stopped, turning to face me, his eyes searching mine. "And what about us? Where does this leave us?" The question hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. I wanted to reassure him, to promise that everything would be okay, but the truth was, I didn't know. The path ahead was murky, and for the first time, I doubted whether we could find our way through it. As the days passed, the tension between us grew, a silent chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Ethan threw himself into his work, spending long hours at the office, while I buried myself in my own projects, trying to distract myself from the gnawing sense of dread. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line read, "Final warning." My heart skipped a beat, the ominous word sending a chill down my spine. I opened the email, my eyes scanning the text with growing horror. It was another anonymous message, warning me to stay out of Calloway family affairs. The words were threatening, a stark reminder of the forces at play behind the scenes. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin, the fear settling deep in my bones. When I got home, Ethan was already there, his expression weary and defeated. "We need to talk," he said, his voice strained. I nodded, my heart heavy with the burden of the email. "I got another message," I admitted, handing him my phone. He read the email, his face darkening with anger. "This has to stop," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I won't let them scare you away. But what can we do?" I asked, my own frustration bubbling to the surface. "We're up against something bigger than us, Ethan." His eyes met mine, a flicker of determination breaking through the despair. "We fight back. We don't let them win." As much as I wanted to believe him, the odds felt insurmountable. The Calloway family was a fortress, and we were outsiders trying to break through the walls. But Ethan's resolve was infectious, and despite my doubts, I found myself nodding in agreement. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We'll do this together." The days that followed were a blur of strategy and planning, as we worked to uncover the truth and bring the family's secrets to light. But the threats continued, a constant reminder of the danger lurking in the shadows. And then, just when it seemed like we were making progress, the final blow came. A letter arrived at our apartment, unsigned but unmistakable in its intent. It was a demand for silence, a threat to expose my own family's vulnerabilities if we didn't back off. I felt the ground shift beneath me, the realization hitting me like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about the Calloways anymore. It was about my family too. The stakes had never been higher, and the path forward seemed more perilous than ever. As I stood there, the letter clutched in my trembling hands, I knew we were at a crossroads. The fight for justice had become personal, and the lines between right and wrong were blurring. But even in the face of uncertainty, one thing was clear. We couldn't back down now. Not when so much was at stake. The tension was palpable as Ethan and I arrived at the Calloway residence for what we hoped would be the final confrontation. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that made your skin prickle and your heart race. We had called this meeting, determined to finally bring everything into the open and lay the family's secrets bare. As we entered the living room, Vanessa was already there, her expression a mask of defiance. Margaret sat beside her, her posture rigid, while Robert stood by the window, his gaze distant and contemplative. The room felt like a powder keg, and we were the match ready to ignite it. Ethan took a deep breath, his resolve evident in the set of his shoulders. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "We're here because we need to address the issues that have been tearing this family apart." Margaret's eyes narrowed, suspicion clouding her features. "And what issues would those be, Ethan?" Ethan exchanged a glance with me, and I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "The financial troubles, the secrets, the threats," he said, his words hanging in the air like a challenge. "We can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not." Vanessa scoffed, her bravado barely concealing her anxiety. "I've already told you I had nothing to do with the money. And yet, here we are," Ethan replied, his gaze unwavering. "If it wasn't you, then who? And why all the secrecy?" Robert cleared his throat, drawing our attention. "There's more to this than you realize, Ethan. We've been trying to protect you, but perhaps it's time you knew the truth." The room went silent, the weight of his words pressing down on us all. Ethan's brow furrowed, confusion and determination warring within him. "What truth?" Margaret shifted, her facade cracking ever so slightly. "We've been dealing with some legal issues," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Things that could affect the entire family." Vanessa's eyes widened, genuine surprise flashing across her face. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Margaret hesitated, her gaze flicking to Robert for support. "It's complicated, but we've been under investigation for some financial discrepancies at the bank. We didn't want to drag you into it." Ethan's jaw tightened, the betrayal cutting deep. "And you thought keeping us in the dark was the solution?" Margaret's expression softened, regret mingling with her resolve. "We thought we could handle it. But things spiraled out of control." The revelation hit like a punch to the gut, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. The siphoned funds, the threats, they were all part of a larger scheme, one that had ensnared the entire family. But before we could fully process the implications, Vanessa spoke up, her voice shaking. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know about any of this." Ethan turned to her, his anger tempered by a flicker of empathy. "Then why the secrecy? Why didn't you come to me?" Vanessa's bravado crumbled, vulnerability shining through. "I was scared, okay? I didn't want to lose you, Ethan. You're the only one who's ever really understood me." The admission hung in the air, a fragile truth that shifted the dynamics in the room. Ethan's expression softened, the anger giving way to understanding. "We're family, Vanessa. We should have faced this together." As the tension slowly eased, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The confrontation had brought long-buried secrets to light, and with them, the possibility of healing. But just as it seemed like we were reaching a resolution, Robert spoke again, his voice grave. "There's one more thing you should know. The investigation isn't just about the bank. It involves some questionable dealings that could impact your future, Ethan." Ethan's eyes widened, the implications crashing down on him. "What do you mean?" Robert sighed, the weight of his words heavy with regret. "There are business associates who might try to use this against you, to leverage your position. It's why we've been so cautious." The revelation was a final twist, a reminder that the fight wasn't over yet. But as I looked around the room, at the family finally united in purpose, I knew we would face it together. In that moment, I realized that justice wasn't about revenge or retribution. It was about truth, about bringing light to the shadows and finding a way forward. And as Ethan and I left the Calloway house, hand in hand, I knew we were ready to face whatever came next together. The weeks following our confrontation with the Calloway family were a whirlwind of change and reflection. The truth had been laid bare, and with it came the slow, tentative process of healing. Ethan and I found solace in each other, our bond strengthened by the trials we had faced together. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan and I sat on the porch of our apartment, sipping coffee and watching the leaves dance in the wind. The air was filled with a sense of renewal, a reminder that even after the harshest storms, life continues to grow. Ethan turned to me, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I've been thinking a lot about what's next for us," he said, his voice steady and hopeful. I nodded, feeling the warmth of his words seep into my bones. "Me too. It feels like we've come through the worst of it." He reached for my hand, his touch a comforting anchor. "I know things have been tough, but I'm grateful we faced it together. I don't know what I'd do without you, Harper." I squeezed his hand, my heart swelling with emotion. "We're stronger because of it. And I think your family is too." The Callaways had begun to mend their fractured relationships, slowly but surely. Vanessa had taken responsibility for her actions, acknowledging the damage her insecurities had caused. She was working to rebuild trust with Ethan, her sincerity a welcome change from the manipulative facade she once wore. Margaret, too, had softened, her protective instincts tempered by a newfound understanding. She had reached out to me, her apology heartfelt and genuine. It was a small step, but one that hinted at the possibility of reconciliation. As we sat in comfortable silence, the doorbell rang, breaking the tranquility of the morning. I rose to answer it, surprised to find a courier holding a small package addressed to me. Curious, I opened it to find a letter from Margaret, her handwriting neat and precise. Inside was a note, simple yet profound. "Harper, I owe you an apology, not just for the past few months, but for the way I've treated you since you entered our lives. I see now that my fears of losing Ethan blinded me to the wonderful person you are. Thank you for standing by him, and for helping us see the truth. With gratitude, Margaret." The words were a balm to old wounds, a gesture of peace that I hadn't expected but deeply appreciated. I felt a sense of closure, a weight lifting from my shoulders as I shared the letter with Ethan. He read it, his eyes shining with emotion. "I knew she'd come around eventually," he said, his voice filled with pride and relief. We spent the rest of the day reflecting on our journey, the challenges we'd faced, and the growth that had come from them. The themes of justice and protection had woven through our lives, guiding us to a place of understanding and acceptance. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ethan turned to me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Do you ever wonder what's next for us?" I smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "I think whatever it is, we'll face it together. And that's enough for me." His eyes met mine, a promise of the future we would build, free from the shadows of the past. "Together," he echoed, his voice a soft vow. And as we sat there, hand in hand, I realized that the journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new revelations, and perhaps even new secrets to uncover. But whatever lay ahead, I knew we were ready to face it, armed with the lessons we'd learned and the strength we'd gained. The story of the Callaways was one of redemption and forgiveness, of finding light in the darkest of places. And as we looked to the future, I knew that our story was just beginning, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family.